who's on this committee, that's not. The form. If they're on virtually, they need to have filled out the form,
Oh,
But
it's
then
a remote form.
occasional vacation, you just. Oh,
That's all I ask. They don't need to go into any more detail, I don't need to know what they filled out, just that they filled it out. Pretty good.
I'm good, thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is Housing, Health and Human Services, what month am I in? July meeting. Thank you, everybody, for being here online and here. Did you say Joe?
no, sorry.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
This is my co-chair, Joe Restuccia, Maria Ortiz, co-chair. What do I usually say right now? It's been so long since I've been in a meeting.
Hybrid policy.
A hybrid policy, thank you. So Manhattan Community Board 4 has a hybrid policy. It can be found on our website. Board members are expected to attend meetings in person unless they have a disability and or an extraordinary circumstance. Please ensure, any committee members, please ensure you've completed the remote form and sent it to Jesse. Excused members and members of the public will still be able to participate virtually. Members who are joining via Zoom must leave their cameras on. Tonight we have an exception, Betty McIntosh, who is a member of Housing, Health and Human Services. She is attending via telephone and cannot have her camera on.
She has no internet service.
Because she has no internet service, yes, thank you. And this meeting is live streamed on YouTube. And a transcript is being recorded. If this is your first time attending a MCB4 meeting, I would like to encourage people to sign up for the listserv. You can get the agenda and tons of other things via email. If this is your first meeting, we're gonna go through some items on the agenda. Sometimes we have a discussion and vote on it here at Housing, Health and Human Services, and then it goes to full board, and then we vote there. And just so you're aware of process, if there are new people attending the meeting, we go through each item, committee speaks first, then discussion can go to the public or the attendees on Zoom, and then we bring it back to committee, and we have a final discussion and vote. And then it goes to the next full board meeting. Today on the other thing is, if you are attending and you do want to speak after the committee discussion, please raise your hand. Today, the first thing on the agenda is City of Yes for housing opportunity. And I am going to give a quick introduction for that, like an overview. And then Joe, I'm gonna let you take it over. You wanna do the introduce thing?
No, it's more housekeeping first. For those folks online, they're just gonna ask you one by one, have you submitted the form or are you not able to come, you're just attending, therefore you won't be able to vote? Starting with Pete Diaz, have you submitted the form for remote attendance? Pete?
I'm stuck on the subway. I'd be there in about 10 minutes. Oh, there's an outage on the subway.
Got it, very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hector, have you submitted the form or are you just not able to?
Yes, I have.
Okay,
I
so
submitted a form.
thank you so much. Katie, have you submitted a form or are you not able to attend tonight?
I emailed Jesse, but I didn't submit the specific form. So Jesse, do I still need to fill out the form?
I don't know the email of the content of the email, so yes, you should always fill out the form. If you're looking to be virtual and participating and voting, you need to fill out the form.
Okay. And if I do it now, does that count or is it too late?
Yes, no, it's not too late, go for it.
Got it. Will do. We'll go look
Thank
for
you.
it.
Thank you.
And Betty.
And then Betty's
already
been taking care of
Yes.
the internet service.
Yes.
So let's go around the room and do introductions.
Lisa David, board member.
Kevin Collins, good evening.
Katie Savage, board member.
John Danielle, board member. Paul Ames, board member.
Ian Buckley, board member.
Board member.
Roberta Barnett, board member.
And just to note, we're all board members, we're all members of this committee also.
So I'm on the committee too. Dolores Rubin, I'm in the corner. You can't see me in the video. That's okay. Rachel, you board and committee member.
Oh, Brian Weber, but not on this committee, just member of the public. Thank you.
Hold of them, board member, not And going to the screen, Katie?
Hi, Katie Stokes, committee member and hoping to participate and vote.
Hector?
Hi, everybody. Hector Vasquez, committee member, board member.
And then Betty?
Hello, can you hear me? Hi,
Yes.
I'm a board member, committee member.
Pete, I'll answer for you. He's in the subway, he's a committee member, and last but not least, our board chair. Go ahead, Jessica.
Hi, everyone. Jessica Chait. I think I got confused on the link that I'm going to use, but seeing as this is what I've clicked on, I'll be joining you here today. Thank you. Look forward to the discussion.
So this is our second and final committee discussion about City of Yes, housing opportunity. We had a very robust discussion. This has been discussed at the Chelsea Land Use Committee. It's been discussed at the Housing Committee twice now, second time. We discussed at the Clinton House Kitchen Land Use Committee. This committee has received comments from the Chelsea Land Use Committee, and we're incorporating those that have not been fully incorporated into the draft in front of you from the two co-chairs. We received comments from individuals. We got comments from Sanford Miller, and we got comments, from two other board members. And we're trying to incorporate those comments into this response.
And, but just, I think it's important to note, assuming if someone is not really familiar about what it is, the City of Yes is just a set of 9 major proposals to modify zoning, and 5 have to do with Manhattan. I have 5 specific ones, but I don't want to get into the details unless someone asks.
Well, we should note though that this is a citywide zoning text amendment. It affects every borough, every neighborhood, every location, pretty much, right? And what Maria noted is that certain changes do not affect our district because we don't have those type of zoning mapped or regulations mapped. At our meetings quite some time ago, 2 months ago, we decided as a group that we would comment on items that affect our district. But if there's certain housing policy items that we're aligned with that are citywide, like shared housing, supportive housing, things like that, we will comment on them in general as housing policy. But as to the specifics, the board members felt it was inappropriate for us to comment on things like side yard regulations in 2-family home districts or something. We don't know what these changes mean or not. However, things that are, shared housing or parking or smaller apartments, these things are in our district because these are changes to zoning text that happen citywide that will affect every district. Is that a good sort of layout of where we are?
Okay.
So we have so far, maybe the 3rd version of a letter that is currently 17 pages, which I'm assuming after this meeting will grow further. And in the next 2 days, 3 days, we'll be refining this into the draft that gets presented to the community board, which is off schedule, which is July 24th, correct? Which is next Wednesday.
Yes.
Next Wednesday. So we are in a very short time frame to bring this to a recommendation to go to the full board. I also want to note something that's happened since our last meeting, which is truly extraordinary in the public process. And many of us could not understand how this could happen. This is a zoning text amendment, which means in a ULURP, it does not have a strict time frame for it. It could take much longer because they are very flexible on zoning text amendments, right? The city regulations to do this. We were told by city planning that we could have our comments in after our 60-day period because the city planning commission was not even planning to hold a hearing until late July. And probably they would keep comments open until September.
Yeah.
Comments are being kept open until September. However, 2 weeks ago, the city planning commission decided to hold a hearing on July 10th, which was 13 hours long. 15 hours long, better. And the idea that we are making citywide changes to zoning and in the middle of the summer and not allowing for a long period of time for public comment is pretty much antithetical to the normal public process. So this speaks to a couple issues. Our board also met with our city council member and director of city council land use 2 weeks ago, roughly.
Yep.
And it was interesting to get a response back from the city council land use division that there are lots of issues with this. There's lots of things that people want to support, there are other things that people don't feel comfortable with. And the biggest issue is people feel that it's being rushed, number one, but also the lack of a nuance of the one size fits all, how does this work and how do we manage through it? Now, we had that meeting prior to knowing that the city planning hearing would happen on July 10th. And did you watch part of that? I'm assuming?
I watched basically all of it.
Well, God bless you. So could you give us sort of like your impression of what you saw? Because I've heard a lot of different things.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have admitted that.
You are really a glutton for zoning punishments.
So comments came from very much around the
Broadly, right?
the city, including this neighborhood. There's a lot of interest in supporting the broad supply piece. And so there's a lot of interest in getting something, but each neighborhood, pointed to some of the nuanced issues with the particular proposals in their neighborhood. And then I will say there are plenty of individuals who came to just say, don't do anything, things have always been this way. But I don't really think that's not really representative of this particular place, but it was certainly represented there. It's all on YouTube if you want to watch it.
And I understood that certain council members came and spoke, which is very unusual.
But not ours.
But not ours, exactly. And they specifically raised issues about this is gonna hurt this neighborhood, or why are we doing it this way? It should be changed. Like, there was a lot of political discussion. So this does bear up what was reported to us by city council land use, that there's lots of underlying issues that are not quite settled. Yes.
Yeah, but one thing on that, I didn't watch.
You didn't watch 15
As
hours.
long as you did, but I did watch it. I found it interesting that on occasion there was back and forth between the chair and some of the people testifying.
Who, the chair?
The person who ran the meeting.
David Rugg.
Yeah.
He questioned people?
He did offer some questions as well as some commentary.
Wow.
Yeah, more than questions. There was
that's
commentary
unusual.
back and forth
Somewhat
and
unusual.
calling out certain jurisdictions with statistics.
Yes.
Which were disputed back and forth. Did you do this? Did you not do this? Are you aware that you haven't done the following and you produced 7 apartments in the last, X number of years, hypothetically speaking. So I found that a little bit interesting that.
So Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but hearings are supposed to be an opportunity for the public to make comment and that to be on the public record and not where any of the agencies that's holding a hearing is providing any feedback, commentary.
No, normally what happens in a city planning commission hearing is that the commissioners will ask someone who's testifying questions. What do you mean by that? Can you explain this further? I've been to uncounted city planning hearings. I've never had the commissioner say commentary or something. I mean, the chair. It's more like, can you explain this or go further? It's not a color. It's clarifying, or we're trying to understand this. What is your point? Blah, blah, blah. I've never heard a chair of the city planning commission dispute someone who's testimony, right? Have you ever heard that?
I don't know if I'd use the word dispute, but suffice to say there were statistics going back.
Right, but offer something and say, here's why you should know this, blah, 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 like this, that says to me that this plan is someone on the defensive.
I guess to add just further color,
Yeah, I want to get the color.
the exchanges that were referred to, and I think they've gotten some play on like New York One, were just meant to fact check using, DCP has this dashboard called where is housing being added? I pulled it up for the purpose of this meeting. And the council, one of the council people offered a belief that they had produced, plenty of housing, and they were the second to last, neighborhood in housing production, and then the chair offered that information. Whether that is, whatever the purpose for that is, or whether that is appropriate is not what I am here to say. I'm just trying to explain.
Yeah, I would say that, I'll call a value judgment on this. It's inappropriate for the chair to dispute someone who's testifying. It's appropriate to say, clarify this, that, whatever, but it says to me that there are issues with this plan. That someone needs to defend and to say, here's my dashboard and say, you're not speaking correctly. These are council members, right? They can say whatever they want and then go through process and they're gonna negotiate. I just, Rachel.
All right, I'm heading here today. So our council members for our district may not have spoken, but I did want to point out that Borough President Mark Levine did speak about his support of the conditions, some of which pertain to our district, so.
Oh, I should also note there too for a moment that Community Board 4 was surprised Jessica did attend the meeting. I can ask her to report on that before we get going. Jessica, you there?
I moved her over to attendee just because she was,
Oh,
thought that she was coming in as a attendee.
maybe she could just report on this. There was a borough board meeting, which many of the community boards were uncomfortable with, and there was a position taken at the borough board. It was really, she report on it. It happened very quickly. It was a very, like, here's the position, you must take this right away, figure this out, and that did not go over well.
He did mention the vote, at the borough.
I believe a lot of
How it was like a generally supportive vote, and yeah, but anyways, from the issues that he spoke with, I thought the UAP requiring the city planning commission to have like an approval that on-site options were exhausted before outside are considered, or there was something about special districts. I know that was something we talked about extensively, but providing guidelines for conversion to special districts. Those two were things I jumped out on.
As you're moving online, not they're on the website.
Right, no, I don't doubt.
I did not push it 15 hours.
Jessica, could you just give us a quick report on what happened to the borough board?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, Borough Board is a monthly meeting that takes place among representatives of the Manhattan Community Boards. City Council members are also encouraged to attend. Interestingly, very few did attend the Borough Board, which was an emergency Borough Board meeting, also to accommodate the schedule vis-a-vis the delay, boards hadn't gotten to it yet, and then with the hearing date, et cetera, there was a lot of concern just about why we needed to take the vote at all at this time and why we couldn't get the extension. I don't know if it was mentioned, but Jesse did circulate a letter that board signed off on requesting that the hearing be delayed. Apologies if that was already said. But overall, I just want to emphasize that the sentiment was one that that more housing is needed, that every district needs to do its part, and that sadly too many districts have not done their part. And obviously CB4 is unique in that case, and we're very proud of that. And I know several of us will actually be attending the Lirio groundbreaking tomorrow as evidence of that commitment. So there was support overall for the concept, but specifically individual proposals, as outlined, people had expressed significant concern. I will say I was pleased and quite impressed with the level of detail and specificity that people could offer vis-a-vis specific individual proposals that are outlined in City of Yes, and I hope that we too will be able to do that, and as always be as constructive as possible, because we all know that we can debate the degree to which there is a crisis or the degree to which districts have produced or not produced, but nonetheless, I do think this board has long stood for more housing, and figuring out a way to be most productive in that discussion, I think is really what our opportunity is at this time. And I think that was run consistent at the borough board as well.
So what was the letter from the borough president? What did it say?
It's not a letter from the borough president. There is a letter from the borough president, and we can, if we haven't shared that, he produced a proposal, actually have it here on my desk, of his recommendations, but the borough board itself of representatives ultimately voted approval with conditions, and the conditions were outlined, as I said, very explicitly to reflect the specific proposal by proposal suggestions, which I think this group will go through. I hope
we're going to get to the details tonight, but I want to say a couple things. One is, it's extraordinary that the borough president acted without all the community boards having acted first, because after all, the borough president appoints the community boards. We are the sounding board, and the borough president works for the borough of Manhattan, not the other way around. The community does not work for the borough president. So he did take a position. It is nuanced, but he did not hear from all of his community board constituents, all 600 members of the Manhattan boards, the 12 boards, and that is unprecedented. That a borough president would act prior to hearing from all the constituents.
Joe, so we took a vote, we voted for,
No,
we did not.
we did.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should clarify. I abstained from all of the discussion at Borough Board. I'm sorry that I did not lead with that. Because the board has not taken a position and no committee has taken a position, I abstained from the entire discussion, as did several other boards. But many had in fact already been able to do this, and it is Borough Board as an entity which was able to approve this. Again, there were many, I think as many as 8 abstentions on certain proposals based on whether or not that committee had felt comfortable with the degree to which their board had taken a position on it. But again, I abstained from voting on the entire discussion, though I was present.
And we are talking about 12 community boards in Manhattan, so when 8 out of 12 abstained, I would have.
Just on certain issues, not on.
Right, on certain issues, but I would have been rather circumspect as borough president
Yeah.
to take a position if 8 of my 12 community boards abstained.
Mhm.
You know, I'm not saying that this process is managed perfectly, but I think there's a bit of certain parts of our government have decided this is what we should do, and they're running ahead of the electorate. So I think we really want to make some comments on the letter maybe. Yeah.
Oh, so I went over the letter and
From the borough board.
thank you. I went over the borough board letter. I'm just gonna give you like a brief overview, JD, especially because you were asking. There was a section with general comments, and what I highlighted for myself that I thought was most interesting is that community board members talked about the AMI levels, tiers, and caps, and how different community boards prioritize that differently. So that was something that was significant. There was no consensus on it. There were also differing opinions about the level of public review that should be required for conversion. Office conversion. And there was also different opinions on whether the ULURP review should be eliminated for CDR, I forgot what that stands for, landmark.
Rural development rights or
Yeah.
landmark development.
Yeah, transfer of development.
Transfer of development rights from landmarked property. And then each section, proposal 1, proposal 2, et cetera, it says, for example, recommend approval, or number 5, the UAP or the universal affordability preference is recommended approval with the following conditions. And there's like 5 or 6 of them. Something else important to us, the eliminating the parking mandates. It says, I don't, maybe you can interpret that for me.
That is a super non-answer. Does eliminate parking mandates, the response is no action with the following comment. The city should improve its transit infrastructure. This is a group dodging the position. That's what I read that as.
Okay.
Well, and also it fundamentally doesn't affect most of Manhattan.
Of course.
It is just I believe it's 9, 10, 11, 12 or 10, 11, 12.
It's everything north of 60.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why well, that's
Is
the,
it circle?
um,
But I'm pretty sure there's
Yes.
big parking folks up there.
Yes, I think that, yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
And that's why there's a dodge.
conversions,
Mhm.
that's recommended approval with several conditions. Small and shared housing, recommended approval with several conditions. Campus infill, again, approval with several conditions. And you can elaborate better on this than I can.
This is a updated mandatory inclusionary housing to apply stronger affordability requirements, change the way that AMI bans are applied in MIH, and require affordable housing to be distributed on 100% of the floors of any building. Now, what's fascinating is, we'll come to this in our letter where we made a recommendation, and then I'll give you city planning's response, which is, we're gonna take them on front and center with this one. I've never met city planning to be the anti-integrationist mode, but that's how they respond.
Yeah, and the same thing with recommended approval with several conditions, the landmark transfer of development rights.
So I think we'll look at this letter. This should be put in the Dropbox, Jesse, so people can talk about that. And there are certain things I believe we should incorporate into our position. others that I don't think we're aligned with at all. So what I want to do is just go through our letter that we have the draft so far, starting with page 3. And page 3 is the specific thing about proposed zoning changes not affecting districts, zoning districts in MCB4. And those are eliminating parking mandates if you don't have parking mandates, allowing accessory dwelling units, low density, meaning districts that are not mapped, adjustments to those districts, allowing more flexible side yards, courtyards, and lot widths, again, not in our district for those low density things. Increasing heights in low density districts, again, not affecting us, allowing more non-compliance in existing buildings, increasing the number of dwelling units for 1 or 2 family houses, and allowing greater residential bulk and commercial strips. And our response pretty much is clear. Many of these proposals, zoning proposals, have their own merit, in housing policy. However, this type of zoning is not mapped in MCB4. We cannot take a position on such matters. So that's our general thing that we talked about how we're going to approach. So the next section is citywide actions that will affect us. And they're in sections, and I want to just read the bullets and then come back to some of the city planning's responses. So, for example, parking, right? We are support for not having parking. We have not gotten an answer though about, does this mean, we heard in a meeting that that accessory parking is a zoning term for parking in a residential building that is limited to only the tenants in that building or commercial tenants in that building, right? We were told in a meeting that would be converted to public parking. That's a very different traffic impact. If you have a building that has 50 or 60 spaces, a large building, and just people coming and going versus them some public parking lot. We did not get an answer on that. So, right, we didn't get an answer on that. So I think I would say we should write one more time to city planning saying, please answer this. And I'm gonna believe the consensus is we do not want accessory parking converted to public parking, which would create a lot more passenger trips with cars. Am I getting a nod on that in general? Okay. So Jesse, can I ask you just to send an email to them on that issue of the parking?
Just to know, Christine raised.
Oh, Christine. Christine, you would have an answer, yes. Can we bring her over for a second? Our co-chair of transportation planning. She may have an answer ready. Also, transportation planning did send comments and we're incorporating those too.
Joe, I think this clause is already in the zoning. It was changed in 2014, where they made all the parking to become essentially shared.
Public.
So it's not a new proposal. It may be, I think it is a new proposal outside of the CBD, but it is in the CBD, it's already the rule.
So therefore, when we had that back and forth with them, they were not even quite remembering what the change was.
Right.
Okay, right, but let's do a verification on that so we can put it to bed. All right, thank you, Christina, I appreciate that a lot.
And we were not happy about it at the time, but it passed.
But no, if in fact that's already incorporated, you know, let's spend our political capital on this.
In the CBD, right? Okay.
Right. So our next subject is shared housing. Now, we got some good responses on that. And again, I asked everyone to look in the Dropbox at this response. It's not dated or anything, but Jesse has an email back and forth. This was attached to. These are city planning's responses. So first, they note that shared housing will be rooming units, which are independently rented. And unlike roommates in traditional apartments, that lease terms will follow the same procedures as standard to dwelling units today. Now, here's an odd character. Here's an odd qualification. While the standard lease terms for both dwelling units and rooming units typically 1 year, operators of both types of units are able to allow more flexible lease terms as proposed, as determined by the landlord. I don't understand that because it's a rent regulated situation. You have to give a 1 or 2 year lease, irrespective if it's a dwelling unit, meaning a full apartment, or a shared or SRO unit. So I think we need to sort of respond to them saying that given the fact that we're introducing a whole new body of housing, shared housing. I believe the city should require, giving that benefit to an owner, they should take the regulation back to make sure they're always gonna be rent regulated. Do we really want to have unregulated shared housing? Let's have a discussion about that, Roberta.
So I guess the first element would be, you know, as long as those, I believe that those city would require these leases to be at least 30 days. So not, it does not say that.
Right.
But typically with, I mean, this is partly due to the Airbnb regulations
Right.
and also, you know, how housing is rented here. It would be very atypical, and I think we would fear, you know, if it were anything other than a longer term, that, you know, people would basically be creating hotels, which is like an actual problem here. So
It's a real problem in our
not,
district, yeah.
it's, you know, we're not, I think that that's very much borne out. I do see value in having regulated stock, but there are people, when you have regulated stock and all the regulated stock we create, there will be people who, you know, may benefit from this, but who will not qualify either because of things like asset status, immigration status, or otherwise, and having some degree of.
Regulated stock rent regulation has nothing to do with your immigration status, nor with your assets.
So yes, but assuming that these are marketed through the city's housing.
Oh, no, they're talking that they're not, they're going to be, these could be market rate units, which is fine.
Yes, no, but what you're talking about is something that is regulated, and at this point, when we are creating, and this could be different, but typically when we create new regulated units, and you know, in the past couple decade or so, we have created them and then required them to be marketed or means tested, marketed through the.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, let me rephrase, I meant rent regulated, I did not mean income regulated, income tested, none of that stuff, I'm just saying that I own a commercial building, I want to convert a part or all of that to shared housing, right? This is a benefit I'm getting as an owner. I am going to make a lot more money by taking what was a 1-bedroom apartment layout and renting it to 2 separate people. So if I can get 1,400 for, basically 1,800 for a 1-bedroom, right? In some commercial conversion, 2,000, right? I am now gonna be able to get maybe 1,200 each or 1,400 each for the rooms. If we're giving an owner a benefit to create shared housing, which has not happened in decades and decades, and we all think in our community shared housing is good, the city should then say to your owner, if you're getting shared housing and you're gonna be able to make a lot more money by people sharing a bathroom and kitchen, then that unit should be rent stabilized, rent regulated, not the affordability stuff at all.
Okay, and so just so we're defining what that means, how I am interpreting what you are saying is that the owner would ultimately set the initial rent at whatever it costs
Right.
to rent that, and then the increases every year or 2 years would be subject to
The normal rent,
rent
the rent guidelines. Right.
And so whatever, and that is what we are talking about.
Yeah, I'm talking, nothing about means, not like subsidized, nothing like that. Straight old, because one of the questions here is, I'm sharing a unit. I should be able to renew my lease to stay there if I want. This says there could be flexible lease terms. Well, that would say it's a 6-month lease. And then
You would still expect, based on the good cause eviction law and how it applies to non-regulated stock, that people would in effect be guaranteed a renewal of their lease unless the owner wanted to take the unit off of the market for any number of good causes that are detailed in the law. But that does not mean that you might not want to require these longer lease terms.
right.
I see value in both.
It's not a way to bring stability. I'm one of the few people in this room who actually runs shared housing. Stability to sharing is really important for the other person in the suite, whether it's 2 or 3, because honestly, guys, you're sharing a bathroom and a kitchen with somebody. And the idea that you could cycle people through doesn't really promote stability in the housing environment. Katie?
I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, that, you know, the rent, having it rent regulated, but also, I'm very concerned that if we don't ask for things to be spelled out completely and we make an assumption that like, well, we think this is what they intend, that that's gonna turn around and bite us. That anything that we're unclear on, when they say flexible, we need to know exactly what does flexible mean? Because again, just like Joe said, I think having, is this the city essentially trying to allow landlords to create their own illegal hotels? Because there are a lot of landlords that rent out units on Airbnb, and it's the landlords doing it. So
Not the tenant. Right?
not the tenant. So is this essentially, if they say flexible, is this a way, without being very specific, to allow them to do these types of things? And I think when it comes to big changes like this, there should be no room for interpretation. Everything should be spelled out exactly what they mean.
JD?
I agree with, Roberta, did you say the landlord could take the share off rent regulation?
No, just to be clear, the state passed something known as good cause eviction in its budget in April. And good cause eviction applies to all rental units where the landlord, in New York City, where the landlord has a portfolio size in excess of 10. So almost certainly if you have a shared housing, you will be in that bucket.
So it's
But they're,
permanently
yes,
stabilized.
or not
No, no.
stabilized, not stabilized. It is subject to a rent cap, basically.
Okay.
Where that is tied or indexed to inflation.
You can't be forced out of a unit that's not stabilized automatically with just like a 90% increase or something.
I guess what I'm asking, a landlord, if he takes an apartment now off stabilization for a year or two, whatever it is, then he can go to months.
That is not how, or in theory, you cannot withhold a unit from the market specifically to destabilize it.
Okay.
It would be added back to the market at whatever the legal rent was historically. And then within good cause, there are, as well as rent stabilization, there are reasons you can take a unit off the market, like the landlord wants to use it for personal use, they want to convert it to commercial, or they want to demolish the building. All of these are legal ways they can do that, they have to go through a whole process.
Gotcha.
I'm just trying to know for everyone's attention that in the case of sharing facilities, a kitchen and a bath, we want to promote stability among the people who are sharing. Because if there's a lot of churning, it's very difficult for the other person to manage through. I think maybe sort of say that in a simple way, right? Like, and therefore, if the owner's getting a benefit, then we should, the city should require they become rent regulated. Because it really is a benefit. It's a 1-bedroom apartment that becomes 2 apartments, or a 2-bedroom becomes 3. Yes?
Because would that also mean, you know, if they are able to raise the rent after one of the lease terms expires, would that mean if they do like 60-day leases, they'd be able to raise the rent every 60 days?
Yes.
Yeah, we can't count that.
I'm just saying
obviously.
this is a.
But again, theoretically, we need to protect against all these
I
theoretical
think
things.
we just said clarity and clear expectations as opposed to. Yes.
Is there a minimum duration?
No, this says to allow more flexible lease terms. This is city planning response on it.
But you cannot rent a unit, like a full apartment unit for under 30 days.
Correct.
But you'd think they would at least have acknowledged that, knowing that that's a law, but the fact that they didn't acknowledge it is very troubling to me.
Isn't one of the best ways to promote stability to require the landlord to give 1 or 2-year leases?
Right, but and that system is actually called rent stabilization. So I think just pointing to that, say that given that we're creating a new benefit, which is great. By the way, I am a total proponent of shared housing, but we have to do some management and regulation with it. Right?
Otherwise, it's a transient situation.
That's the, okay, so this
Isn't
is,
that what happens now? I mean, I know you're saying that shared housing is not legal, but I feel like I see stuff like that posted all the time.
I'm gonna say to discourage transient use, right? The next item is very
Actually,
good.
can I just say a quick something?
Okay, yes, Eddie. Okay, yes.
Thanks. I also think that there's a pretty easy way to say, maybe we don't have to mandate that it has to be, you know, annual, but we could say it has to be at least, you know, a minimum of 6 months, right? Because there may be some people who they don't have the rent or they can't commit to a year. And 6 months might be helpful, but not less than that.
People can always leave a rent stabilized apartment anytime they want. They have, and most owners are happy if you leave a rent stabilized apartment because you get a renewal lease that is a higher amount. That's pretty standard, Katie.
Yeah.
You know, I want to go to the next item, which is, we got some good news here. The next item, we asked them specifically, how do we make sure that existing buildings, if they're converted, right, don't get, existing buildings, there's not a pressure to displace tenants to create shared housing. So the DCP wrote, number one, HPD is gonna release a report later this year, the shared housing roadmap. And they're gonna put forth recommendations for amendments to the maintenance code and the building code that will work in tandem with the proposed zoning changes. I would just note, I would have thought that should have happened before this gets adopted, so we know how these things work, as opposed to after the fact. But they are proposing to allow this development only in new buildings, that's new construction, and in conversion. However, a conversion of an existing building or residential floor area, that means like an apartment house, that to rooming units will require HPD approval, provided that the building will meet all relevant safety and occupancy requirements and does not result in the displacement of the existing tenants. I think that this response is directly coming out of our question about it to begin with. So I think we got a damn good answer on this. And we, in our letter, the idea is we're going to confirm what they've said on this date and this thing, whatever. And I think that's a great thing, because our concern is what happened. So, you know, historically, some large buildings, apartment buildings, Upper West Side were converted to rooming units. That happened in the 1960s and 70s. And the idea that it would not happen again is, you know, so we have a good answer. Yes, Brian.
You say conversions of existing residential.
Yes.
Does it also apply to conversion of commercial?
No, that they're saying that this new piece of zoning will apply to new construction.
Right.
Or conversion of commercial buildings.
Commercial buildings or residential?
Commercial buildings.
Okay.
Commercial. And if you want to apply this shared housing to existing residential buildings, you must get HPD approval.
Okay, I just caution us with that. There's a segment of this district, which is old commercial loft buildings.
Yes.
Which are challenging to convert to begin with. Do not think it is gonna be healthy for those streets with these old buildings to convert to small dwelling units. As opposed to, you know, apartments that could accommodate families. So the whole idea.
I want to come back to this because we asked a lot about the range of units in general.
Right.
And how to get a broader balance.
Right.
But specifically, at least we got some good answer on this one. The next thing is, it's interesting, we asked specifically, you know, how do we avoid pressure for harassment and displacement? They already answered that. But the person answering for city planning really went on and on about how people informally share apartments today. I think whoever wrote this come to the city maybe 3 years ago, people have shared apartments in our city for, you know, forever. And I don't, has anyone here not shared an apartment at some point? I mean, seriously, because who could afford an apartment? Who could afford, never? Oh, God bless you. Who could have afford an apartment on their own when you came here? You roomed with people, right? That's a normal, right? Am I making this up?
Especially now.
Yeah, well, yeah, now and then, I mean, you know, so they gave a long answer, but the thing about it is that they're trying to like protect people who live in this kind of housing and it's odd, it talked about that there's pathways for formalizing existing illegal and informal shared housing. Now, this is exactly the opposite of which we just got told, that if there was a residential building, you could not do something. So I think we need to ask them a further question on this. So, the next item is.
Joe, real
Yes.
quick, so when they talk about shared, is it like you have a 2-bedroom apartment and your roommates and your friends and you've decided to enter into that agreement? Are they saying you would turn that into shared housing?
Okay, so let me tell you, it's interesting. It's illegal in the city of New York for unrelated adults to live in an apartment and share a bathroom and kitchen, all right? You didn't happen to know that, right?
Interesting, okay.
And that's because there was a huge, in the 1960s and 70s, conversion of existing Class A regular apartments buildings into these like SRO floors, right? So, and therefore a law was passed that was anti-SRO, anti-sharing bathrooms and kitchens. Now, not-for-profits always could do that. Dormitories, affordable housing kind of stuff, you go to HPD, they can allow you to do that. This gives it to the for-profit market. And I agree that this is a good idea, but we need to think about how we regulate that for-profit market, because they will figure out a way to abuse it. All right. The next thing we asked for, will the shared housing be rent stabilized, right? Well, we asked the same question, right? And I swear by God, the answer is, like dwelling units, some room units are stabilized, some are not. You know, it was a sort of, but if there's tax incentives, you know, and then it says the shared housing roadmap will not affect existing SROs. So I didn't think it was going to affect existing SROs. I think that we're at least getting some response on our questions. The biggest issue, again, with shared housing is if you have a lease, you are sharing a bathroom and kitchen. And if somebody moves somebody in next to you, the owner, and you have a huge issue, it's a conflict. I manage as a professionally, we have people in buildings that just manage conflicts between tenants sharing a bathroom and kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they do. Yes, Pete.
In the share house, I can envision a landlord, having a nonprofit come in and say, I have a client that needs a space. And, will do that, actually benefiting.
No, if it's an existing building, they'll have to get HPD approval. That's what we learned from their response. Now, I think, we should ask though, should we get notification?
Yeah.
Jesse. Like there should be this community board notification, not necessarily we're gonna, you know, just so we know, right? I mean, we're not gonna say, you know, but if, let's say it's a building that's got major legal issues or harassment, we would be able to get a notification to respond back, HPD, please look into this further before you approve X, Y, or Z. That's a good thing, right? Yes. The next item is, how do we ensure a balance between studio and family side apartments? We got a very long response back, and it talked about corridors and courtyards, and gave a picture of here's how you can do, you get cross ventilation, you have flexibility. It didn't answer the question, right? So then we went further and said, should buildings of 100% studios be permitted? And the answer was yes. That proposal would allow that, and we see no reason why land use regulations should prohibit that. Our research indicates that 100% studios won't be common in the Manhattan core, but proposal will create options on the margins for all studio projects. This says that no one's gonna build 100% studio buildings in Manhattan, they're gonna be built in the boroughs. I honestly, from a professional response, feel like that's just ridiculous, because the value here is in Manhattan. And we're gonna see commercial office buildings converted, because our further question is, we say things like, well, could there be 1,000-unit studio building? And I'm not joking. The answer was sure.
Would you get students to trust on kids?
Of course, of course.
What is the problem with that?
Well, okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Not everybody stays your age forever. What I really feel is a thread coming through here, that we're frozen in time. Because our next question is, how do we deal with households that change and grow? People can move within a building. And the answer is households that need more space, but most likely move to a larger apartment in the building. There is no sense that there is a community inside a building. So where you live, you may be in a studio today, right? But your life circumstances change, you have a partner, you're with somebody, there's a baby involved, there's a parent that comes to live with you. You're gonna try to find maybe an apartment in your own building because you have neighbors, friends, people that live next door, whatever. That's what we call, you know, I refer to that as community. And the idea that we are creating an incentive, and I think our problem here is that it's an incentive in the Manhattan core to have like dormitories of studio apartments. Only. Because any owner who is developing, and they're, let's say it's a commercial conversion, that commercial conversion is gonna seek to get the most greatest number of units in. So Liam, so the question is, how would you respond to that if it's only a building of one kind of person, period, who can live in a studio apartment? And there's no interaction with anything else. What do you think? It's important that you raise this because you come from this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like any building that's one type of apartment would be bad, but I mean, we're bringing it up because we think they would do it because there's a need for it for younger people, for single people, and if the conditions were created where that was viable and that was affordable and people didn't have to have as many, you know, roommates or whatnot, I think that would be a positive thing.
So
it's
what
not
happens-
something that lasts forever.
But what happens when people's lives change?
Married, have children.
They rent new apartments.
Brian?
So, I just, you know, we're talking about specifically like young people living in studios. Reality is I live on a block that built 1,000 hotel rooms in the course of 10 years that I've been there. And hotel rooms are essentially studios, some of them with kitchens or without. That has really changed the makeup of my street and how people live and function in the neighborhood. And so during the pandemic, those hotel rooms became essentially studio apartments for a specific population. One of the things was nobody had any room in their apartments to live 24/7 or 8 hours out of the day. And so everybody flooded the streets, and it doesn't work in Midtown Manhattan. The other thing is to Joe's point, is that it doesn't create community, it creates a transient population. That we will have buildings full of single young people or maybe single old people, but will be constantly moving in and out of that environment. So is a building with 1,000 studio apartments better than a building with a mix of apartments, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms? I mean, in all my years being on this board, we've always sought that healthy balance, and we've always sought to integrate opportunities for young and old alike to live in our neighborhood. And I think this negates that, and I think it is, to Joe's point, developers will look at this from the lens of how can I maximize my profits?
My return.
And my returns, and this is a very simple way to do that. So what if all of a sudden, instead of having a mix of units on a street, you now have 5 buildings that are all studio apartments? All of a sudden you have 5,000 studio apartments on a block. It's possible. I'm personally, I don't think it's healthy.
Roberta and then Rachel too, just.
I'll say on the future.
I thought I saw a thought in that face.
Yes.
Yeah.
Roberta first, yeah.
So I think, one thing that I think is important to distinguish is like the difference between like hotels, which are now kind of difficult to build and are generally in use, and then shared housing, but I think everything that Brian says is still quite important. I did want to like note that, or just provide a bit of experience of people generally in my demographic, but not exclusively, just who are on the younger side. At this point, like, we are the people taking up family units, you know, I think the plurality of
In sharing.
yeah, in sharing them, you know, it's, you know, people in.
People
like,
share
3
2
or 4
bedroom or 1
people,
bedroom, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So people are sharing multi-bedroom units.
With a flex wall,
and
the room thing.
sometimes a flex wall. And that is ultimately what is taking up family apartments within this neighborhood. A plurality of this district is now between like 25 and like 40, with that heavily weighted between the like 25 to 35 bands. So like, this is a substantial group of people who are ultimately, you know, I don't want to say taking up what could be for families, because that's a bit ridiculous. We're all just playing housing musical chairs, whatever we can find. I don't blame anyone for living where they like.
Whatever they figure out.
Yeah, like that, no one deserves to be villainized for their choice of housing. But this would ultimately allow, you know, some degree of being able to free that up. I think the experience of being a younger person at this point is a deeply transient one, unfortunately. At least if you are in, particularly if you're in market rate housing, I know very few people who do not move every couple of years. I think that is like a really common experience.
You get rent concessions when you move.
Yeah, well, not even that, because rent goes up and also the quality of housing is incredibly bad. And you're like, well, I could leave, that would be good. No one loves it, but like the options are all kind of bad and also quite expensive, so it can make sense to move. And so the elements that relate to building community within a building, I think wind up sounding a little bit hollow to people who, you know, like regularly are sort of pushed to move.
Something to you very specifically. You're now partnered with somebody and you really need a bedroom, because you need to get away from that person. I'm just saying that this is not about a either or. There's some nuance in between that we could offer as a solution to say, there should be no more than 30-40%, like something like this, to talk about how to balance something, right?
And then I would just ask if that has to be building specific, or particularly with the HPD process.
No, these are,
So
we're talking.
So this could be about new, but this could also be about HPD's process. If there is a way
They're not part
to
of this.
limit the overall, what I would describe as concentration on a particular, in a particular block or a particular area. I think the idea that you can't have a building that is entirely studios is probably not quite as useful as just ensuring that you don't have exclusively studios on a couple of blocks and creating the type of problem I think Brian alluded to. And I thought that's sort of.
I do wanna know one thing though, that it's not HPD at all. This is straight zoning. And this is development and conversion. So it's nothing to do with subsidy at all happening. So come back there. Rachel.
HCC, you could use the conversion or.
Right.
I know we have a lot of points to cover, so I don't dwell on this issue too much, but just to add to kind of the younger perspective shared in the room. Yes, currently residing in a studio apartment, 6th year now, family is growing, and you said what happens if your family grows? With Manhattan's rent rate right now, maybe the reality is you keep put. And
He's in that studio.
we've been in the studio, like working, you know, 2 jobs, splitting the bathroom for like looking calls, but that's just the reality, because every time there is an opening in the building, you know, the rent's just as high, and other studios. It comes down to rent, honestly. I think that's why building more affordable options would certainly help.
Yes.
And several of my colleagues around our age group have resorted to just leaving the city, and that's the reality of it all. And that's kind of the problem we're tackling today, right?
Right, but again, when we build and we convert, it's for the long term, right? So the question is, in the housing stock that we're encouraging to build, is this housing stock, especially when we're talking about conversions, which is gonna be a big part of what happens here. Do we not want to temper the production so it provides a range? Because it may be that if it's a 1-bedroom, unrelated people may want to share that 1-bedroom like people do today. Or it's a 2-bedroom, people may want to say, oh, I can move my family into it. I'm just saying.
Right, so to going back to that item that we're at, the 100% studio buildings, that just seems like creating more revolving door scenarios where, you know, the studio rents are already high, then the next studio raise it, and you're gonna resort to having to find a bigger, better lifestyle outside.
Lisa, then Katie?
I'm dropping mine.
So this point,
Oh, Katie, sorry.
this point specifically goes towards the getting rid of the dwelling unit factor.
Yes, it's part of the whole dwelling unit factor discussion, and we just asked questions along the way and they gave responses.
So the proposal in city of yes is to completely
Correct.
eliminate it 100%. So as you were saying, And knowing that there are more people that desire studio apartments, perhaps just tweaking what that ratio is would make more sense to allow, you know, buildings that, like, so say you have a walk-up building with 10 units, that can be all studios if you want, it's a smaller building. But if you have like a 300 unit building, you have to have a certain percentage of each, and maybe you increase it beyond whatever the current dwelling unit factor is to allow for a little bit more, but you're also preventing having a building that's 300 studios, because I do agree that that's, you know, a very large strain in an area when you have all those people, and then also if you like your building and wanna get a larger apartment, you kinda can.
I offer 2 points of information, just,
Yeah.
so one, there is, for outside of the transit zone, it's on a map, it includes our district. There is the proposal of the elimination, there's also the proposal outside of that area for the rest of the city, on the reduction of the dwelling unit factor, so we could also take a look at that and see if that would be more appropriate. And then I think DCP gets at this, but the biggest, arguably one of the bigger problems in Manhattan, or the prime Manhattan area below 96th Street, is apartment sizes are growing, which sounds counterintuitive, but what is actually happening is it is a result of the development of very high-end housing. And so the elimination of the dwelling unit factor also has an impact on that as well, because it
Yeah,
kind of at the other direction. So that's just not something we're necessarily talking about, and I'm not saying we should cap the size of apartments necessarily, but just like that is, I think, part of the other side of the equation. I don't think we want to encourage that either.
Let's go to Katie, and I'm plowing through this, Katie. Oh, then JD, I'm sorry.
Is that Katie Stokes?
It is, yes. Oh, I'm sorry, right. Katie Stokes, yes.
So I fully support putting language in that says that we should not have buildings that are 100% studios. And I think this goes, Roberta, you just mentioned the extra huge apartments that seem to be being built. I think it's all about, look, builders are always going to build those buildings where they can make the most money. And if you can build a big building and you can cram as many people into it and as many studios, then that's what they're going to build. And the fact of the matter is, I think that it is going to be a real loss economically and for families because people are absolutely going to be motivated to build all singles or all studios and not build the rooms that actually have a living room and whatever space that a family needs. And so I do think that we need to say that it's important to have space for families or extended families to be able to move into. And so I do think that we need to mandate or request that things not be able to be all studios.
It's all types of households, not just families, different, the broad range of households that we have. JD?
I agree. I just want to ask Roberta, as I understand, DCP has gotten back and said it's not going to happen in Manhattan.
No, they're going to say it's not going to happen. It never will be built in the Manhattan core.
Roberta, is that the reason? Because
No,
Sorry, they said that you wouldn't have too many. I believe what you're saying, that you wouldn't have a lot of them.
why are they saying that? Is it because
I think that part of why they are saying that is kind of what I was alluding to earlier.
Right.
The trend of development in the prime Manhattan area is toward larger, very high-end apartments. And so, sure, you could cram as many people into studios as you could. You can have these micro units. The dollar per square foot that you're getting is quite high, but you actually could, assuming that there's still a market for very high-end housing, you could potentially make more money building that type of housing.
I'm more concerned about the office building conversion. And the office building conversion that could go to 1,000, maybe not that. I think that's the risk we have in our district. Office building conversion that is all of a sudden 100% studios.
Gotcha.
And then one other thing is if they decide to use either tax tool, and I think upwards of 80% of new development, that includes conversions, in the city winds up using some sort of tax incentive, abatement, exemption, whatever it is. If they use one of the two big ones, 45X or the HCC, which is the commercial conversion tax incentive, I believe that there's a certain minimum number of 2-bedroom units.
So what's interesting is that we asked this question, we didn't get that, that's, if we can note that, because that's
Yes,
a.
we should add it to the.
We should add that here because I think the issue we got going on here is the idea makes sense to get more smaller apartments in general. But we have to temper it so we don't end up with the opposite side of it.
Didn't the find the building on West 42nd Street just convert from commercial to 1,500 apartments?
It's going.
Right, on the east side, yeah. Well, that's a contemporary, that's most current as possible. Do we know what type of apartments those 1,500 are?
No, we certainly requires.
No, I think one of the other things to consider for our neighborhood is with this nature of this, is that there's a huge demand for pied-à-terres because of all the transit-rich options into our neighborhood.
That's true.
So it's not inconceivable that you can convert all of our, commercial buildings into single studio apartments, which would be great for residents who, dwell.
But you're not gonna go to the Liams and Roberta's,
No,
you're
no.
gonna go to the people from White Plains and Westchester to have a
Absolutely.
pied-à-terre or a studio. Yeah,
There's also, I mean, I don't know the implications of this, but we're trying to accommodate a lot of young people. There are also gonna be a huge number of old people who live in the city and wanna stay in the city and probably don't want all the space that they have, so that's another sort of smaller apartment demand that's.
I think we've had a pretty robust discussion on this, this is good, I think the idea of saying that we want, this is a good idea, but somehow temper it, right? It's the tempering, right? And then we have the specific question, is the 20% 2-bedroom requirement in the preservation of the Clinton Special District preserved, modified, or eliminated? And the answer is, it's being eliminated. And I can tell you historically, that's about making sure there's family apartments adjacent to Midtown, and we're gonna request, no, that should be preserved, period.
So Joe, is there a built-in incentive here for existing buildings for owners of existing
No.
buildings to go down to single units? I mean, is there a
No.
built-in?
No, but the point of it is, once you're able to do something, if you own a building that Paul lives in, right? 10 apartments, floor throughs. And for various reasons, you're able to vacate that building, either it's rent stabilized, that's ownership, it's rent stabilized and now it's not, or the last 2 people die or move out. You could take that building. And today in Clinton Special, you must create 20% 2 bedrooms in there. You can just make that building all studios. So.
In this proposal?
Yes. I think, and again, the idea makes sense. I think it's taken too far. So we then asked, should this provision provide allowing to new construction and office conversions to prevent unintended consequences of reducing the number of family size units in existing buildings? And I swear by God, here's their answer verbatim. Because subdividing larger units into multiple smaller units is complicated and expensive, requiring the addition of kitchens and bathrooms, all the new plumbing that entails, we do not expect to see the subdivisions. That's exactly what happened on the Upper West Side in the 1960s, 1970s. And we're gonna write back to them saying, just for your information, this is what happened on large family apartments on the Upper West Side and brownstones that were converted. I think we should, write back to them and say like, that many remember, he's a little too short on this, that's what would happen. Any owner is gonna do that, But I find that fascinating, it's like.
I did a little history reading, I believe that was part of the reason why, I don't know. if it was a recommendation. Well, why you have that 2-bedroom requirement in the central Clinton district.
Right.
There was an attempt at creating a lot more 1-bedrooms and studios through subdivision and demolition.
Right, it was the whole idea, it was the subdivision. So, and then we said to them, how can we incentivize and manage future developments or create healthy, diverse, and well-balanced neighborhoods, including a mix of apartments, shared studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms? And I swear by God, the response was all about courtyards and easier courtyards, and that gives you more light in the air. So sometimes they gave us solid answers, other times they just went around with it. The next item is commercial conversions. So we again asked a large range of apartment sizes and commercial conversions, and the answer is they have to solve tricky layout issues, and that means we get unusual apartment sizes. That's not what we asked. We asked about number of bedrooms. So I think Roberta's issue about the requirements for the 458X and we dropped that in here as our response. And here's my favorite of the whole thing so far. The large office building is converted, and the dwelling unit factor is eliminated. This could result in a 1,000-unit studio building. Is this outcome desirable, and does it fulfill sound housing policy? And the response was, sure, exclamation point. This would represent one building in a city with hundreds of thousands of units in them, and the most pronounced need in the city today is for smaller units. I really feel the truly academic response, the idea that no one should say to us, sure, we're raising a serious policy issue, we try to work through it. So listen, we're gonna be solid on this.
Someone was having fun.
So I would just say, I would just say it's like the goal just to create as many units as possible.
Is more important than
Quality.
range.
Right.
Because then are we gonna deal with having to then combine all these cities?
Right.
Yeah, it is like the de Blasio idea. The volume is more important than the quality and how it fits into a neighborhood.
That's right.
So, it's taken it to a basic street, that's all. And at the same time, we have a housing production problem. Like, it's now, we're gonna, upfront enough, we're gonna say, we acknowledge this, we support this, and in fact, our board's been on record for decades pushing housing production, both market rate and affordable, so, then we talk about conversions. And we asked for there to be set aside 25% of the residential floor area. How do we get this affordability requirement? Well, it turns out that it's a 25% affordability requirement on square footage, but our question was about numbers of units. So you have to sort of figure that out and talk to them the next couple days about this. But there is, as Roberta noted, this affordability requirement.
So,
Yes.
repeat that, Joe, what is the affordability?
It is 25% for conversions of the square footage. 25%,
Of the square footage?
yes. Which actually, I believe, probably gets us more in the end, right?
So I think this
More
is
than 20%.
reflected in both of the major tax pools past the state level. The goal would be you would have the same amount of floor area that's affordable. And so that you wouldn't have, the same number of units, but less floor area that's affordable. As if you were making a unit equivalency, if that makes sense. So.
I'm sure it doesn't.
Because then they can do like a bunch of small units and say that they're getting their number of units, but it's not.
But it's not as much square footage.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the standard of square footage gets us more affordable use, which is good, I think. What, Paul?
But they're eliminating zoning, which permits the size of apartments.
No, but the square footage overall in the building.
I understand, but.
Right, but you're getting.
Everything relates to each other in weird ways.
So I want to move ahead to universal affordability preference, and Jesse, could you bring up the presentation of the slides? Yeah, did everyone get that?
Yeah.
I think this is one of the most instructive and illustrative things. So, here's a fascinating thing. It turns out that at some point, someone in the city of New York took the time to model every single building in Community District 4, its bulk and height, and put it in a GIS mapping system. Do you know about this, Katie? I didn't know about this. I know about this all, right? That was shocking, right? So therefore, an existing model was there today. I worked with our community planners on housing to look at this and say, okay, did you do this? Is it your project that you know?
No, it's not.
Okay, sorry, like, it's the most amazing thing. So now you can take that, and you can also twist a bird's eye view, down the street, whatever, and look at what the current buildings are, what the current zoning allows, and what the proposed zoning allows, what the universal affordability preference. So Jesse, let's go through a few of these. We looked at Chelsea first, right? These locations, West 21st, West 19th, West 20th. Down, next. So here is looking down, down 10th Avenue, West 21st Street, and one of the sub areas of the special zoning district there. And this is, can you move the people? I can't see the title on the upper right.
Are we looking north or south?
I think this is the existing built environment.
Existing built environment, yeah, but he wants the direction.
South.
North, it says between 21st and 23rd, and if that's 21st, then it would be looking north.
North, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, next. So this is the current zoning, so you can see the blue shows how higher you could build and more bulky you could build with the current zoning, right? Now let's go to the proposed. Now this brings us to the UAP. And I think, go back a minute, Jeff. Yeah. And go back again so we can see it. So that's where we are today. Next one is where we are existing zoning. Now this is where we can go to. So I think this is significant, right? Significant change. And in our presentation, everything was heavily minimized. Go to the next one. Now we look at the blocks 22nd to 21st to 23rd Streets between 9th and 10th Avenues. Existing. Here's what you can build today. Here's what you can build with the UAP. So that's a significant difference. Keep going. Next one is West 19th, 21st Street, 8th to 9th Avenues, and that's partially the Chelsea Historic District. That's existing. Here's what you can build today. Now, next, here's what you can build going forward. So again, I think this is a very, very large impact on blocks like that. Now, I'm gonna note, not every building is gonna get increased, not every, but it's gonna also mean that with these changes, we will get a very weird sawtooth effect on top of certain buildings. And we talked about this before, about the issue that in order to make additions, you'll have to vacate the lower 2 floors at the top of the building, and this is a whole incentive for harassment displacement.
And so can I ask, if you are actually designated as historic, you can actually do this blue building
You can go to today,
today?
you can go to landmarks for an addition. And we've seen lots of additions in Chelsea. And with all these things we do, Paul, you can speak to this.
Yeah, any additions within the historic districts, Chelsea go through an LPC review.
Yeah.
And then there are often conditions, such as lighting shadows into what we call the donut hole in backyards.
Right, they usually,
And then there's setbacks.
they usually have to be further back so you can't see it, right?
Yeah, so there's a sight line from the street, if you're standing 6 feet tall and you're looking up this way, you can't see it. There's sort of setbacks, there's yard restrictions, there's shadow restrictions, light restrictions. And LPC has a series of guidelines on that, and nothing can be changed to the facade of the building.
Yeah.
But the question here is that this particular axon doesn't show you the district boundaries. Not all this block is in the historic district.
And it also, this also doesn't show, and I think the other part of the question is, it was about the transfer of the rights. So if you're within a district and those get transferred, and that's something we have for discussion later, but like.
Right.
So first, and to think about this, if 2 or 3 of these buildings.
Transfer the development
rights from one to the other, that red zone that you see on the top could move. You could take 4 of those red blocks and stack them up someplace else.
And this is again, with the proposed, you have to have affordable units, which is the laudable, proper thing that's being put. I think we want to say in our letter that we support this idea in concept, there's no question. It's the execution that has issues. Kate?
So I guess my question is, so currently the blue level is what they can build up to
Today, yes.
today. And so if you're in a landmark area, you have to ask permission. If you're not in a landmark area,
So let's
how often?
Here we go. Let's go next.
Okay, I just wanna know how often buildings do build to the maximum height and whether adding all of this will see more incentive because they can build even higher.
That's correct.
Will they start to
It's
build?
not just higher, it's bulkier. There's more density involved now. Go to the next one. So now let's go up. Are we still in Chelsea?
Yes.
Yes, so now it's 22nd Street. This is outside the Chelsea Historic District, right? Now, that's existing. Now today, that's what you can do. You can add some storage, you can do infill, smaller buildings can become taller. With UAP, especially on the avenues, this is very different. Next, we're gonna go up, maybe north, up 22nd Street, outside the Historic District on 8th Avenue. Today. Right, so go back again with that. That's today, existing, what can be built going forward. That's a dramatic increase.
Cause the building's already mostly built to their max, current max.
Right. Okay, let's keep going. And now we're going north to Special Clinton. Now I'm in the preservation area. We're looking at 2 sets of block, 47 to 49th, 9th to 10th, and 43rd to 45th, 9th to 10th. Next. So here we have 47 to 49th, 9th to 10th, right? And we're looking.
Why don't we slip that?
Huh?
Why don't we slip that?
And we're looking, that the blank area is South Fishing Park, for example, and we're looking east. So that's the maximum that can be built today going forward. Next. That's under the proposed zoning. So you can see that the change.
But
is
it
not-
gets, it gets higher.
the change is not so, under proposed zone, right? Now, let's go to UAP. There we go. Let's go through these 4 slides again. So here's today, the neighborhood that we are familiar with. Tenements, 5 stories, 60 feet, you know, different feeling. Next. That's under the current zoning. Current zoning. Now the proposed maximum zoning. Now with UAP. So that's a dramatic change.
I would just add one thing, we can't show this, but those blocks, there is a unity, especially on 47 from 9 to 10 of the building type. If you add all that, you could add every single.
Right, what I want to note here is,
There's no restriction.
this
of what
is
you can
zoning,
add.
this would not mean that this would happen. It would
Right.
mean that you would have a 60-foot building and a 115-foot building. Like I think one of the things here that I find.
But Joe, what I'm saying, you might also, besides the sawtooth, you can have all different kinds of styles that would look so dramatically different.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think the thing here is, there's always gonna be changes.
But that's important for the people who live there.
But you could have that right now.
I don't think.
Not in the special district.
No.
So you would have, if you went through the special district process, you would have to go get you would have to get a special permit to demolish the building, and then you would have to.
No, you can't get the special, there's,
Oh, you cannot demolish at all.
no, you cannot get special, you can have special permit for, the demolition is only, it's physically insane.
Has to be condemned,
It's
yeah.
343 is what is.
That's condemned.
That-
Basically
That's
demolished
a
by
big-
neglect.
Yeah,
They
you
did
know,
it to themselves.
so I'm sorry, let's go back for a second. Go back, sorry, that's the end of your own keys. Okay, so here we are, today, right? Now go forward. Proposed zoning, you can add a little bit, right, in terms of the density.
But you still say the height limit, even with this. Right?
No,
No, it's
this
not,
increases the height
it
limit a
increases the
little
height
bit.
limit. Yeah, we still know.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said this was what we could do now. I misunderstood.
The blue only is what you can do now, and that's the height limit.
Gotcha, sorry.
So the red is the slight increase above the current height
Right,
limit.
Gotcha.
and the next one is with the UAP, that's a dramatic change.
20% off.
Thanks.
So does this UAP, is it available just for affordable housing or
Yes.
is it a mix?
No, it is,
Just
it
for affordable.
is, okay, so, and the thing we talked about in our couple meetings ago is that someone could take a building, vacate a building, and UAP means that you can add somewhere, by the way, the additional unit, the affordable units are not on top. The affordable units are somewhere in the building, right? So,
But you have to have them if you wanna build that.
yes. Yes, Leo.
Is there anything preventing them from building from what it is currently to the blue, to the maximum? Like adding on?
Yes,
Now?
yes, today we have height limits, mid-block, 66 feet on the avenue on 115.
I understand, like, there seems to be a big gap between what is now and what can be.
So I
Right.
think he's talking between the yellow and the blue.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, yes, because today, it's not only the density's being changed, right? You know, how many square feet you can build, but also the height limits are dramatically being changed.
Right.
So in a mid-block, in an avenue, you go 115 feet. Under this, you go to 145 feet. That's 3 stories, right? So there's not a lot of incentive today in a district where you can build to 66 feet and a building may already be at 60 feet to build something.
So they're already close enough to the height limit, so there's no incentive for them to increase it
I'm
higher.
gonna revert on 1 second, and that is, and it's important here is that these height limits were actually determined by city planning. Because they looked at the building type, which was pretty much tenements that are very deep. And they said, that is a roughly 66 feet in the mid-block. And the avenues back in the, like the last 20 years, they put a cap on it. We have those few, but like where Maria lives, and Nicole bought with development rights and created a tall building. So the Department of City Planning said, it doesn't make any sense. Let's also do a slightly higher limit on the avenues, so you can get development to happen, but not tree roof. Or.
And then.
So this, at least what is proposed here, setting aside any transferable development rates. This is very similar to what existed between, I guess, really 2019 and 2022 in AIRS, which was a senior housing preference that allowed an additional
Correct.
20% density bump. And if that was retired specifically for fair housing reasons, because places.
For legal reasons, because it
Yes.
because it's not gonna meet fair housing requirements of, it becomes discriminatory.
Yeah, so the idea is you want families to be able to afford to live in high opportunity neighborhoods. We would be considered a high opportunity neighborhood, and
We're served well by transit, we're in good location.
anyone here is upset that like that is a possibility. But we did have not a super long period of time, but a period of time in which this type of development, minus the TDR piece, was allowable. We had received or wound up seeing a single project for it.
On 23rd and 8th.
On 23rd and 8th. I think the question of avenues and mid-blocks are different, and I think that's probably a conversation we will, like wide streets, different from narrow streets. But I think that just as it's gone up, it's looked fairly contextual to other buildings that are catty corner to it. And
Oh,
it appears
that building on 23rd and 8th on a wide street and an avenue is perfectly reasonable in size. Here we are talking mid-block narrow streets, and to wind us back when we come to the special zoning districts, all the heights were negotiated for a reason. Because in fact, there was upzoning along 8th Avenue, along West 42nd Street, along West 57th Street to accommodate high-rise buildings to bring in more housing units. Clinton Special has the first affordable housing bonus in the city that predated like decades, right? And in Hudson Yards and West Chelsea, everything was bulk goes here and height gets limited here. And I think the issue that many people in our district have, the special districts exist for a reason, because we spent decades negotiating the distribution of height and bulk to make sure we get a lot of density on that street and preserve the lowest stuff here and preserve the unregulated housing.
So just.
And by the way, I said that like 45,000 times. Oh, Hector.
Oh.
Hector, I apologize. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Why don't you finish up? Hector, I didn't see you because everything's minimized. I apologize.
So just, I guess in conclusion, both you have existing discrepancy from what is built and what is buildable, that by and large does not get built up as of right. And then the relatively few, we've only got a single application, individuals took advantage of this proposal because it is ultimately onerous to have to add these affordable units and go through the HPD marketing process. So while I'm not saying that this is a reason to do it, it is a reason why if you're seeing the block in red, it's not gonna look, it's almost certainly not going to be that every lot is built to a.
Have you met a developer?
I talk all the time.
The moment that we give license to the development community.
But we did it in AIRS, and we offered them the same level of incentive for.
We did not have heirs mapped in special zoning districts with height limits, base height limits, all this stuff that preserved the sense of neighborhood that has existed for the last 50 years. You know, if you go back to prior to 1973, the reason Hell's Kitchen Park is there is because developers bought those buildings and demolished them in order to clear a site to build a high-rise building. And then they walked away from that because it became city-owned and it was a park. But the idea, and then there's a mid-block community garden. Those were 5-story buildings that owners bought and were trying to develop high-rise, and then their ability to get dense buildings was frustrated by the mapping of the special zoning district in Clinton in 1973. Listen, it's not as if that community hasn't been through this before, right? Did city planning say we're doing something less than we would have? Well, that's great, but the bottom line is they're touching things that aren't broken. Because in fact, our district has pushed And our board has pushed to rezone areas further west to higher density and to rezone the avenues to higher density. And I think the thing that I'm sensing over and over is that complete lack of understanding that we have a process that's actually worked. And what are we, number 3?
We're number 4 over since 2010,
2010.
which is when DCP's data for their.
So we're number 4 in the production of housing units in the entire city out of 59 community boards. We're doing something right. That's not a process that's broken. And in fact, our affordable housing plan has all these different sites that say rezone, redo, which we have in our letter. I mean, let's go to.
I just want to say, I mean, I'm sorry, I think Roberta is saying we shouldn't worry, it's gonna be all right.
No, she's not. She's not.
I'm just saying that this seems very alarming, I think, to some people, and I'm not saying you should not worry. But I don't think that it is helpful to believe that, you know, you'll just see a massive just uptake in height increases. And that it is perhaps worthwhile evaluating this, maybe not in the Clinton Special District, but in certain non-housing subparts of the Clinton Special District, the special Hudson Yards District where there's no housing. But there may be places where this is appropriate because ultimately you do get more affordable.
Actually, we do ask for other locations.
Yeah.
To have much more major upzoning than this.
Yeah.
We have blocks that have FAR of 2.
Yeah.
Then go to Hector next and then Dolores. Hector, sorry.
That's okay. Great mock-up, by the way, whoever did it. My question is that, I mean, I don't know, I kind of disagree with Roberta a little bit. I think this is something to be very concerned about, because honestly, I mean, what developer or building owner is not going to chomp at the bit to have an opportunity to make their building more profitable? So I could see them beating down the door just to get this going. My question is that, let's say the designs for this on this larger scale may be the end goal. Are there any controls, or will there be controls in place to make sure not too many of them happen at one time, or there's a certain limited distance or maximum distance between the developments while they're going on? And my second question is you know, what happens to the tenants? I mean, basically, I know in some cases, some of them will be removed for whatever reason, or relocated, I guess, or do they stay in place? I mean, is there any plan to accommodate those situations?
So Hector, first answer is, this is zoning, it becomes as of right, and there is no control over what gets developed when. And then the issue we raised, which we're gonna raise in our letter again, is about when you allow additions and density increases, it does require legally by Department of Buildings, tenants must move out of the 2 floors below.
Yeah.
And that is a major impact. And you know, I think it's interesting, Katie, shit, Roberta, I did it twice tonight. Roberta, I think the point of view that some of us bring to this is that we've actually seen this happen. And that's the part that Hell's Kitchen Park is there for a reason.
Yeah.
These big empty spaces are there because owners bought in order to develop. And then the district preserved and also preserve the rent regulated housing.
And on top of that, I would include, if you go on 9th Avenue here and walk north a few blocks, there's an area that has 2 corners on 37 and 38 on 9th Avenue that have massive buildings going up. There used to be tenements there, they were illegally demolished. And now with their as of right abilities. Today, they're
Which would be,
building up higher.
those buildings would be increased by 30 feet.
If they had waited,
Yes,
they'd be even higher.
yes.
So it's very concerning as someone who has lived in this area for nearly 20 years, that I've seen this happen. And where I lived on 36th Street, in a little group of buildings between a parking lot and Dyer Avenue, anytime one building was for sale, I was waiting for all the buildings to be bought and all of us to be kicked out and a high rise to be built. That didn't happen there, but the parking lot was purchased and the parking lot behind, and now there's a giant building called the Lewis there.
That's
So this does happen, and as much as we can protect some area, like, you know, Joe said, instead of having everything kind of equal out, having low areas and high areas to have variety within our neighborhood makes a little bit more sense.
Dolores.
I think we do need to be alarmed, and I think the reason why we do need to be alarmed is because this is not planning. This is hopefulness. This is, we have a problem and we hope that we can achieve additional affordable housing by literally removing any of these so-called restrictions, which they're not restrictions, they're zoning laws that enable people to follow a process in order to build within the context of the community. You remove those restrictions and you really allow anything to be built anywhere along the lines. It's not as if in every single block we have single owners. We have multiple owners, some large, some small, that will have their own individual financial needs. And it's the financial needs which will drive this. And it's not affordable housing that will drive this. Because let's make no mistake, if you have the opportunity to go ahead and build higher
In exchange for 2 units.
for a minimal amount of units, there, along that whole process, you will most likely lose a good number of the tenants that may have been in there previously. And then you end up becoming able to rent out the rest of those apartments at market rate. So we net, we may end up losing within our special districts affordable units because we will drive for more building, which will increase the market rate units. Well, hold on, my concern is that this is not planning. This is hopefulness. And what city planning should be thinking about are what mechanisms that they can put in place in communities like ours that does produce affordable housing, on how to protect the existing affordable stock. Because as we are an aging city, we run the risk of losing a lot of housing that our elderly can afford today, not the affordable housing that's going to be produced for the future, which is older people are completely priced out of that market.
Could you explain this, somebody? So you could add mid-block 3 floors, 4 floors.
Yeah, 3 floors.
Whatever it is.
Yes.
With the requirement that you have to add, is it 25%?
20%,
20%, which, what is
25 is for the
Is
conversion.
that 1 unit?
2 units.
Probably 2.
2? Do they have to be in the new?
No,
So they could be in
Basement?
the existing building? Okay.
they can be on the back of the first floors.
So you've met your requirement. And those extra 3, 4 floors could be market rate.
Yes, and I want to know
Thank you.
further, there's a change in our yard requirements here. In this district, you must have a 30-foot rear yard, because the tenements are very deep. And the idea was if a new building is built, you want to make sure you preserve light and air to the adjacent buildings. That gets reduced to 20 feet. The idea that we're gonna be in an area that is very dense in the depth of the buildings, we've noted in our letter that we know we don't want the yard
I don't
requirement.
understand. So you could go, they're now 30 feet.
It's,
You could build.
many tenements today have a rear yard of 15 feet, 20 feet or 15 feet.
Right.
And therefore, if a new building is built or an addition is built, you must maintain a 30-foot rear yard. There's another requirement as part of the zoning that reduces that 30-foot depth of the yard to 20 feet. So imagine you live in a building here, right? There's a building next door, right? That is not that deep today.
Right.
You can only add like 70 feet back and you must have a 30-foot yard. Now you go another 10 feet and have a 20-foot yard. That compromises light and air for existing tenants,
Yeah.
you know? So it's just, again, the kind of thing where, and it's in the name of, desperation,
Please finish your thought.
No, it's just that it's in the name of getting more production. But it's not just the production, it's the quality of what happens, and if you compromise light and air to adjacent buildings, doesn't make sense.
Joe?
Yes.
There's someone, member of the public that has never hand raised?
Yes, that's recognized.
I just want to follow up.
Oh, Rachel, get it, yes.
So just so I have a clear understanding of some of our committee members' concerns here, is our concern about, there will be more market rate units versus affordable units that currently exist based on what Katie mentioned earlier about, landlords potentially evicting tenants illegally, or because isn't the idea of the whole City of Yes plan that more housing production will lower market rates?
That is so super duper mega, okay, let me give it, before I go to our next person, let me give you this.
Question may sound naive, I'm just trying to
No,
connect the
naive.
dots here and trying to understand what economically is what we're foreseeing to happen there.
Yeah, my concern is that this is not a plan to produce affordable housing, this is a plan to build. There are premises and assumptions made in the text of, you know, of what they're describing that they want to achieve. They'll reduce racism, they'll reduce inequality, all of these things that have absolutely no correlation. It's just to remove restrictions so there could be more building under the guise that there may be affordable housing added. In our particular district, there is no proof that they will accomplish any of this. This is my concern. My concern is that they're providing assumptions with no proof that they actually can provide affordable housing. Where if you take Community 4's affordable housing plan, we provide a blueprint to how we actually can produce probably over the numbers than they expect to get from if everybody built up to the new zoning.
And am I missing a link here and thinking, in order to build up to that red, aren't they required to produce affordable housing within those?
So let me respond to that. The answer is yes, maybe, all right? So we asked specifically, we produced over 12,000 units between 2010 and 2023, right? And their response was, and then we said, how is this blanket rezoning, upzoning make up in CB4 make up for the shortcomings of housing production citywide? The response was, referring to this as blanket upzoning fundamentally misunderstands the intent and effect of these proposals, right? And that we look at your district and we produce roughly 0.07 units per acre over 15 years.
We don't have acres.
Exactly, well, that's what they use. And our map of projected distribution shows that CB4 will be below the median. The effectiveness of these proposals is driven overwhelmingly by their maximally broad geography, not the significance of changes at any one place. This says to me that you have a neighborhood or neighborhoods that are gonna change. The production is gonna be below the median of 0.07 units per acre over 15 years. Yet our district, by doing major rezonings, has produced 12,000 apartments, which has added to the city's overall supply. But that is not the way to go, because we're just part of the maximally broad geography.
Right.
This to me is, I swear by God, I feel like I'm in planning school.
Yeah.
Somebody talking. And that's shocking to me because this is not where we are. This is the city of New York that tries to figure out really good, solid, new, innovative ideas on how to do something. And by the way, when we, in our districts where we preserve on the strict demolition, we preserve rent regulated housing that changes over time to market rate housing. If we didn't have those restrictions, the block that JJ lives on, with Dolores, those would be totally gone, rent regulated housing would be gone. And this is about not stopping change as our districts, they manage change.
I wanna add one thing, maybe this
There's someone come,
helps
Gabriel.
Rachel a little, but we have a mandate to preserve the economic diversity of the special district.
It's in the district's general purpose.
So that seems to me, that's a worthy goal, I think we all fought for that. So if you, in a scenario where you put the unit, get rid of somebody, make that an affordable unit, and you have 4 stories of market rate, you're changing the economic diversity of the neighborhood. That is, I could be wrong, but that's one concern I do have. I understand we want to build affordable, but the result might be to shift things where it becomes more of a market rate special district. And that was contrary to the goals of the city charter.
Well, it's contrary, not to the city charter.
Well,
There's only resolution.
So that's one.
Yes, let's go to Gabriel Doherty and then to Katie.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, it's hard to follow up Joe's very eloquently put speech. But yeah, my name is Gabriel. I live in Hell's Kitchen. I've lived here for 2 years. And I just speaking in favor of UAP, but I want to not respond to the people, but just respond to what I actually, or what people have just said, but actually just respond to what I see on those slides. So with the changes, definitely the one in Clinton, I actually walk that street often, 48th, between 48th and 47th, was it? I do see what you folks are talking about with the magnitude of changes, but I actually, in the Chelsea Special District, I actually see those those buildings increasing their height to the buildings across from them. So I was just wondering, this is a question, kind of, is height actually the primary concern here, or is it, about the other aspects folks mentioned, like concerns about displacement while these are being upgraded, or maybe, or is it concerns about the facade of the buildings? That's my question.
Our community has always embraced more density, meaning more square footage on lots and in districts. We're always concerned about height because there is, with the height, an incentive to displace people. Owners really want those upper floor units, whether it's in a low-rise, mid-rise, or high-rise district, because they command a premium rent. And that drives the economics of, oh, I can get more for something, whatever it may be. So I think, Gabriel, that's one of the things there. It's definitely the height really drives the economics.
Okay, yeah, and yeah, that does. You can't see my camera because for some reason it doesn't let me use it, but I'm nodding. Basically, yeah, one last point, I guess, for you, Joe, is, I mean, yes, there is this concern about them like wanting to make more money by adding to the height, but at the end of the equation, right, we add height on top, maybe that's some luxury unit or whatever, but also we just got 1 or 2 units designated as affordable housing. And I was wondering if that could be a source of affordable housing and market rate housing, in addition to this excellent work that Community Board before has done in producing these high density, exceptional zoning items. That's my last thing I wanted to say.
So I'll give you a good example. In our letter, as we're getting to it, we looked at 11th Avenue, which we've, in our affordable housing plan, over and over, saying in the West 30s, you zone 11th Avenue. Today, it is required only a 6 FAR maximum. The square footage is very high, the heights are very high, but you can only build up to 6 FAR of residential. It's limited. It's a super commercial district. In our affordable housing plan, we noted if you change this to the normal 12 FAR, right, you could build in that location from 34th to 41st Streets, you could build roughly 4,600 units, of which there would be 1,300 affordable. But if you upzone that to the new R11 zone of 15 FAR, you could build 6,000 units and 1,800 affordable. So instead of looking for 1 or 2 units on various mid blocks that have all kinds of protections, we could, by one fell swoop of zoning an area of an avenue, create, 6,000 units and 1,800 affordable. That's how our district has functioned. And I think, Gabriel, that we're trying to figure out a way to say, look at what's worked here and let's try to make it work further and get more production, as opposed to what Pete noted or Dolores noted. I feel that by looking at the districts and changing, it really is about development and not affordable housing production. And they've said it, you're only going to get 0.07 over 15 years through this very act. But you dismantle the community fabric as part of it. That's
0.07.
Per acre.
Units per acre.
Why don't we include that example in the letter?
It's one of our last pages of the letter, yes.
Okay.
Katie's next. And then, okay.
David and then Jessica.
David and then Jessica.
Sorry.
Yep.
I'm holding all my comments because I'm a member of the public, I'm a member of the committee.
No, you can, we'll recognize you in a second.
So you're letting all the members do a public speak and then.
I'm gonna let Paul speak next. And we'll come back to Katie in a second, okay? Paul has spoken. Yes. Yes, speak.
These other people on it.
You're up.
Want me to go right now?
Yes.
All right.
You haven't spoken much, everyone else has spoken.
No, I just have a long list. But I didn't
Go ahead.
All right. So first of all, I love the work that's been going into this. I assume almost all the questions that are in the version of this letter will be turned into statements.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're revising them as statements. Yeah.
I'd recommend that we move the paragraph near the top about the community workforce housing production units. There's a lot of conversation about what we're able to do in our district because of the work that we do. And I think that gets very too far down the letter.
So move the housing production in front.
Yeah, right in the first 2 paragraphs. We have a myriad zoning districts, and we are we're the top 4 housing producer in the city. We understand how planning and zoning works to produce housing. And we have a affordable housing plan that also promotes that. So I really kind of stress that. On the second page, on this version, I have line 49, the bullet points. I think it would be worth adding a statement in the bullets, that this is proposing an allowance for mapping of higher density housing, maybe above 12 FAR. We're the only community district that has taken position on higher density 12 FAR. So I think that, and we address it later in the letter, so I think that we have to have that bullet up front in this bulleted list. I think the special zoning districts is clearly something that we have a lot of concern about. And so we mentioned it here in the beginning, which is good, but then as we get through the letter, I think we have to have some other.
Or we're gonna detail them, right? Yes.
On page 3, on the proposed zoning text changes not affecting districts in 4, we have the category of those that don't affect us and those that do affect us from the zone change. But I think this gives us an opportunity to talk about the success of transit-oriented developments and village centers, which are part of City of Yes, don't necessarily impact us because we've already met those standards.
We're in the major transit core.
Exactly, but to say transit-oriented development does promote lively, vital neighborhoods and is a good method of producing housing. Village centers are essentially what we have on most of our avenues, where it's storefronts with residences above. That model of housing production is a successful model. And I think that we should reiterate that.
If we say that, we live that.
We live that, right? And it's successful. So we applaud City of Yes suggesting that in other parts of the city, even while we're not opining on it. We're just saying these are good housing development models. I think in that paragraph 95, where you say, starting in line 9, zoning proposals, we cannot take a position on such matters. We might shift that slightly and use it as an advantage. We will not, as opposed to cannot, we can't, we want to, we won't. Because we have a precedence of not opining on stuff outside of our district.
That's not mapping our district.
And that's not happening. And we would appreciate that, it gives us the opportunity to say, we'd appreciate that reciprocity and deference from people outside of our district telling us what to do in knowledge. I think there's a lot of places that are saying, put the density in, go 12, 18, 15, 18 FAR in Midtown. And we're not saying don't do accessory dwelling units. So I think we should throw a line in here about, we would request deference and reciprocity, and other groups not opining on what impacts us that will not impact them. So I think that we need to throw in a sentence there. On small apartments, that goes back to the yes and no stuff. We'll change those in statements. On the section on create new very high density residential districts, I was going to page 4 on page 5. On this version, line 205, MCB4 needs to review and reconsider this position in light of proposed action. I'm not quite sure, but
give me the line again.
It's on 205 on the earlier version. I think it's still 205 on the latest version. 204, MCB4 needs to review and reconsider this position in light of proposed action. That sounds to me like we're reviewing the proposal on the 12 FAR special permit process.
No, we should make it clear that we still support it, right?
Yeah, like that sentence is a little bit confusing to me. And then when we get to the special zoning sections, so I'm down to page 8 on special zoning districts. I think that we need to repeat here how important it is that we have, 75% of our district is special zoning districts, and we are the 4th highest producer of housing. And so special zoning.
That's fascinating. 70% of district is 70% of our community districts, 75% of our community district is special districts. Yet we are the highest producer, 4th highest producer.
So that leads to we need to exempt special districts. Or special districts that are promoting housing, because I know there's wetland special districts and whatnot, that we need to exempt those from this kind of sort of blanket statement. And then as we go through each of the districts, so by the way, I don't like lines 306.
No,
it took us 3.5 hours. Like
send me all of the information.
Yeah, that one's, but I think that in each of these districts, we should use the production that has happened. So within the special Clinton district, how we produce this number.
I have had updated in the last 2.5 weeks, the points of agreement reports In other words, the commitments versus the production. So now we have up-to-date stats.
Great.
In every district.
So like in that within the special event district, we notably have a preservation area and a perimeter area. And that's how we accomplish this, like use that model. These districts were designed to produce housing. They are still special districts, and we shouldn't then eliminate to get to the early discussion about Roberta, whether we should panic about this and Dolores saying we should. If we take out the special districts and leave the special districts guidance that's in there, they're producing housing, they're designed to produce housing where it's appropriate, designed to preserve the neighborhoods where it's appropriate. And I think that in each of these special districts, so Special Clinton District has an intro paragraph, but the Special West Clinton District doesn't have an intro paragraph. Special West Clinton District did produce housing.
You mean?
I mean, Special West Chelsea. Sorry, sorry. Trying to go back. Special West Chelsea.
We produced a incredible number of housing.
Right, it produced, now it wasn't affordable necessarily,
No,
but it was housing.
It produced both market rate and affordable.
And we contributed to the housing fund as a result of the work, because again, we had nuanced sub areas within the district. We did all these sub areas, height, bulk, and we have like one of the biggest tourist attractions running through the middle of it all, right? So we have done this time, so I use this opportunity to again repeat that it's a special district, it's designed with specific nuance in it, and it has produced housing. And not have to go revisiting all of these graphs and charts about.
So let me give you their answer.
Yeah.
Because the city of Yes represents our citywide fair housing plan. I didn't know that does that. I thought it was a zoning text amendment. And because DCP believes strongly in its component proposals, DCP does not believe it would be appropriate to exclude special zoning districts in Maryland.
We disagree. That's fine that they say that, but I think that by us saying that we are 75% special districts.
That's great.
For
That's great.
highest number, you can't say.
You can do preservation and limits,
Yeah.
all kinds of restrictions, and still do production.
Fourth highest producer in the city.
Dolores's plan is hopeful, her labeling of their plan as hopeful is important. This is factual for number 4, leave it alone.
I like that.
I think in the special thing, moving on to special Hudson Yards District, you kind of combined Government Center District with special Hudson Yards District. Again, special Hudson Yards District, we're proposing, we go to 15 and 18 FAR. No one else is talking about FAR that's that high. We are talking about that, so use that again as an example. A special district that is producing housing, just keep hammering that point. And then on the special economic district, make sure that we talk about the MSMX conversion, where they gave us a number of how many houses that will be produced by maintaining bulk height restrictions of the government center district while producing housing. So again, that theme of we can produce housing and still be respectful of the neighborhoods.
You mean you can do actual city planning and produce housing at the same time?
Exactly. And then my final point is on, really comes from Chelsea. And I don't know what Chelsea sent you, Joe, in terms of.
I got a whole thing about landmarks trends.
Okay, that,
We're gonna incorporate all of that.
that was the other concern I had.
But there is one thing though, there's an idea that if you're in a non-landmarks district, you can transfer to the avenue, you cannot. That hasn't changed, so I gotta get back to that.
Again, my thing with the special, this has been my fight from the beginning, the very first presentation on this is they don't want to exclude special districts. I think we really have to hit very hard that we need to exclude these special districts from this UAP in Special Clinton in places like that, because we have experience on how a special district can produce housing. And they shouldn't just say to us, oh, it violates fair housing. That's not, that's a bogus statement.
That's a smoky screen.
All right.
Not true.
Rent is done, thank you.
Okay.
That was-
David, we're gonna go to David Holoka.
I'm Katie,
Hi.
sorry.
Oh,
On Katie.
Katie?
But, no, Dave, you haven't spoken, go first.
yeah, the first slide that you showed a particularly sensitive stretch of the Special West Chelsea District along 10th Avenue with the Historic District on one side and the High Line on the other. Just as an exercise, I looked at some buildings within the district there to the west of 10th Avenue, directly across from the Empire Diner between 22nd and 23rd Street. There are 3 buildings from about 1900 that contain 29 apartments. And I went on Street Easy and checked their rents. They are a little bit below what the median rents for apartments their sizes would be in Chelsea, probably because they're old buildings. And it occurred to me that under UAP, someone could come in, let the apartments empty out, buy the buildings, knock them down, put in a building that would be 80% market and only 20% affordable. And the market component would be astronomically expensive simply because of where it is right next to the High Line. And you can do the math in your head. 80% super expensive, 20% affordable versus currently 100%, a little bit less than average. There would be, I believe, a net loss, as Dolores said, of affordability. And at the same time, that's where that 80-foot height limit is. And that's very important because that was really tuned to the height of buildings across 10th Avenue in the Chelsea Historic District. In fact, there's a pretty contextual building a couple of blocks south of what I'm talking about that went up, and it's just about exactly the same height as the General Theological Seminary. As soon as you allow existing buildings to be replaced by larger buildings, it creates an incentive for them to be treated as tear downs. And we have so many of these older buildings, a lot of them are walk-ups that kind of naturally lend themselves to preservation of affordable housing. So, here's a case where there would be a big negative effect on the High Line, a big negative effect on the Chelsea Historic District, and I think we'd have a net loss of affordable housing. I don't know if we can figure that into the testimony, but I really do agree with what Dolores said.
And I just want to note that generally, older buildings are going to rent for lower rents. They're not going to be at the top of the market. And I think what we need in our district is a range of affordability. So a new building in Chelsea, a 2-bedroom, maybe 6,200, right? But in an old, what? High 8,000?
Well, they're leasing now, I think it's at least something in the 10.
Right, it can be even higher, but an older building, even in a renovated apartment, is not going to be $8,000 a month for that. It just isn't in a walk up. So it's all a matter of degree. Katie, you're next.
Thanks. Paul took some of the words right out of my mouth. I actually think that this letter, we just have to brag way more, and we have to start at the very beginning of it saying we are so grateful that the city has finally acknowledged that every other district should do that, which we are really good at. And that everybody should be building more housing. We really have to say, like, we've done it so much in a way that you all should just be dazzled by, and we know how to do it thoughtfully.
Yeah, put dazzle in the letter. I like that, Katie.
Go ahead, Katie, sorry.
I really think that we need to brag more, but I also think that we need to be super careful about our language and about the reasoning that we're using, because I think all of our reasoning is right. I think sometimes our language is wrong. So, for example, like we talk about wanting to, like in line 358 and 359 near the end, we talk about wanting to maintain livable communities and the context of our neighborhoods. I think that the city is understandably very cautious about sort of code words for redlining, right? And we obviously don't mean any redlining, but we have to be careful that nobody else could interpret our reasoning. And I think what we need to be really clear about is we are not trying to protect, if you look at some of our language, it's like, oh yeah, we want to shove all of the new affordable housing over to our, to our edges. And again, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to do things in a sort of thoughtful, mindful way. And I think we just have to be careful and to say, look, we've been great at building, and we have these special districts for a reason. And you tell us what number you want us to hit, and we are going to make sure we hit it in whatever number of years you tell us to hit it in. And we are going to do it in the same thoughtful, great way that we've done it so far. And we think it's really important for a whole host of reasons to protect the special districts that we have. But let's be careful not to use language that looks like we're trying to protect certain neighborhoods here and shove things over there. What we're trying to do is be really thoughtful and mindful. And I think the points that Dolores raised about we have to make sure that we're not losing what we have already as affordable housing, and that we need to protect our older housing stock and have the incentives in place to build new housing stock, right? And so I think we really have to just brag way more in the beginning, take credit for everything we've already done, and to just be mindful of the language we're using so that we're not accidentally tripping into the very things that they are worried about.
Katie, thank you so much, and it's great that we're on YouTube and recorded, because all of that will get transcribed into a paragraph. And that's what's been so helpful with all these meetings, because when the folks are working on this, they can go back to sections in the meeting and know and get the language. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah, and I'll also send in some sentences too.
And again, I want to encourage every community member as part of this, if you see a section, send please to me and Maria, because we need to get these in the next like 3-4 days, all right? Right, it's really fun. I want to give you one more response from DCP, and then we'll go to Roberta again. So we wrote, the current MIH rules and VH rules say only 70% of the floors have to contain affordable units. Although the community board 4 has been working with developers, and we've gotten 80 to 90%. And we call for a citywide text change to make better integration. Here's their answer. That's great. For citywide applicability, we believe the existing distribution requirements strike the right balance between wide distribution, no over concentration, and the feasibility for a staggering variety of projects, neighborhoods, and market conditions that we see. I think we're aligned with the borough president here in Manhattan, that they asked for 100, we should ask for integrate. The point of it is, I've never seen a city planning agency say, we don't want better integration, economic, racial, and ethnic immigration. That's the thing we ask for every time. And I think as part of this, we gotta push it.
100%.
Now I'm gonna say Roberta, not Katie.
So I agree with that. I will, like, when we're thinking about this on a citywide level, we have the conversation, some distribution of units in places where the market isn't as strong, it's just gonna be harder to distribute them. But here where the market is really strong, we can ask for that, and there's no reason we shouldn't. So I would put it in there. I would say, like, if other places determine that that's not appropriate, I personally think that's fine, like on a policy level, but here, like, we have evidence that this works, that.
I also want to say something. I think underneath this all is a belief that poor people should not live throughout a building. And there should be a section reserved for higher income people. And I think that's an underlying piece of bullshit that I would like to get slaughtered once and for all in this discussion.
And that's, again,
And
not in the
you
letter.
can quote me on that.
I did want to sort of see if I could,
please,
I don't know, aggregate some of the things that have been said. It sounds like on UAP, there's this desire to exclude special districts. But we do acknowledge in the letter that, like, we did have an AIRS project, it was successful. I would actually, one thing that might be worth proposing is allowing UAP for infill or just non-tear downs or non-residential.
That's
because it frankly, it worked and it was good, and I don't think we should throw out the bathwater while we're trying to preserve.
Well, the question is, if you do it within the existing structure, that existing height limits and restrictions, that to me makes sense, because today, if there's a 1-story garage on West 48th Street between 9th and 10th, and that gets built, UAP should apply to that.
But in the special district, but you could see how outside of the special districts on wide streets, how there could be not.
I'm with you. Listen,
In an infill context, you're not, like, the whole reason we are able to build so much housing is because we have all of this land that we can basically put infill on, because there are some demolitions we actually have.
I have a thought for you. Maybe we want to say that within existing, height limits, whatever, but also for sites without residential floor area.
Sure.
Because that means that was the Woolworth's drain weed, whatever it became on that corner, and that was a non-residential building, right? So, yeah, 23rd and 8th, like, that's not a big thing.
Yes, we have a lot of non-residential buildings.
Those are conversions.
Conversions, okay.
They're covered by something else.
I just want to get back to the UAP. I think Dolores put it very politely, and I'm not suggesting you use my language. But there is a Trojan horse aspect to this plan, which basically is like, we're gonna solve New York City's woe. We're gonna do something here, we're gonna solve housing, we're gonna solve racism, stuff like that. And we're gonna do that, we're gonna build taller, and it is not ever discussing the quality of life of those of us who already live in these neighborhoods and have to live through this conversion. And I think that
Live through these changes.
live through these changes, and I think that we have to consider livability. And it's something that you bring up here in the letter, is that how do we create this change without encouraging demolition of existing neighborhoods and existing homes? And with the Garment District, you talk about how do we encourage conversions without encouraging demolition to create tall sky rises when you already have overbuilt existing structures. And what is it in the zoning that prevents that from happening? Currently, it doesn't.
So Brian, you asked the
Yeah.
question, how do we do that? We do that by carefully crafting land use language.
The garment center is the
And
example.
not making everything as of right. Again,
That's a problem.
there's, I know, that's a problem question, but making everything as of right does not, there's no evidence that we're gonna produce the amount of affordable
Also, the
housing.
heirs was actually reviewed, was at public review.
I mean, we could request a public review and that, like, I think errors worked. Like, I think we got a good result out of it and.
But on a specific location that can manage the density.
Yes, however, we did have, at our public meetings, we had a lot of pushback from a majority of the community that lived directly in that area about the inappropriateness for that size of a building because of the nature of that community. You're saying it works, and maybe it does work because we're seeing it after the fact, but that it does impact the people that actually are already living in an area, and this is what Brian's talking about. And Katie, your point about language is very important. I think livability, maybe we find a different word, but that idea of livability is how, what are the conditions in a community that make it good for everyone? Not as much construction, affordability of also the retail, of groceries, et cetera. Appropriate number of social services available.
We have to drop in a section on our general community and public services that is not addressed whatsoever in the zoning, and in their EIS, it says, it's so big we can't address it. Really? I mean.
Right, so bottom line is that, what I meant about areas is that we did hear a lot of pushback from the community on that it was outsized for the community that existed.
But we carried it through in a nuanced way and discussed it and got it through a process. And I think that's our hallmark as a board, right? Of like, how do we do this in a way that we are responding, there's a huge need, which is in our, preamble, but this is a blunt instrument, not a nuanced, careful approach. So let me go around the room because we're now at, almost at 9 o'clock. I know, but no one expected this was gonna be the 25-minute discussion. Starting with Lisa. Of all the comments and questions, anything else to add, because we're gonna have to obviously revise this here again, Lisa.
The only thing I wondered is, we're number 4, I don't know who the other 3 are, but this like. The assumption is we have to do the same thing across the entire city or we'll get nothing.
Oh, you mean,
So do we know anything about the other 3?
Yeah, Williamsburg is one, because it was all industrial,
yeah, it's
one
like
out in the city.
downtown Long Island City, if I'm remembering off the top of my head.
It is.
Yes, it is.
Those make sense.
Long Island City,
Well, no.
Williamsburg, downtown
Well,
Brooklyn.
they were gonna go,
I couldn't hear the answer.
oh, sorry.
What were the top three?
Long Island City, Williamsburg, downtown Brooklyn, which includes some of the surrounding neighborhoods.
And the first 2 were major industrial areas rezoned, and the third was commercial area that became residential. Okay?
I just like, it seems to me like for us to win on this, there needs to be an argument for saying you can't just, that this shouldn't be the same answer for everybody.
I'm gonna note that I don't think history starts in 2024. As a general idea.
Deal.
Just one.
Oh, this is in twenty.
Why?
Um,
Don't?
You got it.
Really? Gabriel?
I've been holding off speaking.
Oh, please.
I have a lot of comments, but I'm gonna go through as quick as I can.
Yes, please.
And then you're gonna send them also.
So you.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. What's this strategy here? I know we're writing a letter to DCW, but that's a mayoral.
DCP.
DCP, I'm sorry. That's a mayoral.
Our elected officials are the ones who.
Exactly, because with, for example, with the city of, yes, economic opportunity, the city council, we're able to change 14 of 18 points.
Right.
So that's really a
Our political read so far, city council has huge constituent issues about this around the city, and they have lots of
So
questions.
even though we're doing this letter, strategically speaking.
The city council is our,
City
is our audience.
Is in play.
And one of the things in our meeting with the land use, director of land use, he said, please be specific. Your community board is always very good at giving specific, like, suggestions on how to modify
So
things.
I'm not gonna repeat all the conversation, but CB4 is a fourth best, right? There's some districts out there that have hardly done it.
Right.
Why can't the city of New York say, they said we over 15 years need 100,000 units, right? Why can't they say each unit is responsible for building?
Each community district.
Community district is responsible for the X. CB4 hits it out of the park, then we're okay. That maintains the local autonomy. Why can't that be done?
I think one of the issues is that there's such a variety of districts that you're gonna get, normally the homeowner districts out in Southeast Queens and stuff, they're just not gonna produce
No.
anything.
Every district is told you have a responsibility of producing X.
X, as opposed to an equal number.
No, X number, right? CB4 almost surely, will, and even go beyond. So I don't know if you think that's pie in the sky, that could be incorporated verbally, that tell us what you expect from us, we'll hit it, we'll get it, we've already been doing it.
I think maybe we should note that as we have produced, maybe part of this plan should be a real plan to get targets in each community district.
Wait, or another way, let's say this whole thing is passed right now. What's gonna happen in CB4? It all depends what Shakespeare market, we don't know what's gonna play out.
How the developers decide.
Oh, you're gonna, no, there's gonna be, this is a land rush, there's no question. Yeah.
Alright, then, secondarily, hit the protect special districts. Third, in the letter, by the way, thank you to folks who wrote the draft of the letter, it was
45 drafts so far.
But the AMI, 6% AMI going down from the 80% AMI. Pushing back on that.
Yes.
Or, especially hitting, like, if people work for the city of New York or certain types of industries like healthcare, that should be taken.
They're in that 80 to 165, no question.
This might be from Christina, the transportation committee, but if a certain number of housing is produced in a certain area, that would trigger a city investment in funding for transportation impacts such as buses, bike lanes, pedestrian walkways.
There's a whole list from transportation planning, it's not incorporated in this document. They gave us all.
That's a missing component, the infrastructural.
Oh, 100%.
Impact of this. I like the discussion about, even though it might be all New York state legislation, reiterating the good cause protection and the rent height protection, the tenant protections. Also, if certain number of housing was built, that to be on-site social services such as medical, mental health, counseling, and vocational training.
For any supportive housing, it's required. That's really required.
The types of housing, whether it's SRO, studio, one bedroom, two bedroom together, maybe, I'm trying to think outside the box, sure, maybe it's we do like by we would do with cannabis, that if there's a type of building, let's say a studio building with a certain type of ratio, you can't have that on each block. I'm explaining that properly.
No, this is what, who brought this up? Bro, Roberta, you're not. I did it again.
No, you got it, Robert.
You should correct yourself very quickly.
I'm gonna fix my lips and brains now. So I want to say that there is no city planning mechanism to do that. That's the problem.
So hypothetical, well, then let's say, I'm just choosing.
Yeah.
This is not, what's 45th Street? Every block from 9th Avenue to 11th Avenue could be, the whole thing could be all studios.
Yes, and the problem we have here is that don't believe we have a city that coordinates among multiple agencies to figure things out.
What I'm saying is
It's like DOB, HPD, Department of City Planning, they don't.
It's a way to structure that where that wouldn't occur. And the last thing, this may be aspirational as opposed to strictly within zoning aspect of it, but the jobs that are produced by this, if they have the appropriate pay and benefits and the union jobs.
That more ties to the tax incentives than that is tied in.
Right.
Those are required. A union job. Rachel.
I think we already discussed everything in length, but I just wanted to say, I think the letter is headed to the right direction. I do think highlighting MCB4's contribution up front is necessary, because the way that draft is currently working is very just.
It can't be city of no, right?
So I will be sending drafting suggestions, but I do appreciate today's discussion, especially kind of the concern shared about economic preservation and integrity of the district. But to the extent that we are speaking to those points, I think we should use facts, such as I think Dolores was going into specific examples of how that might affect quality of life / livability.
Roberta is gonna give us some research and information on this. I'm gonna just shoot myself.
Every time you've done that, I think you need a ballot.
Yeah. So already.
Be rich.
We get our rent paid now. So with those information, I think the letter will be in good shape, so thank you, Roberta.
Yeah. I think, my main points are, we should look at, what the reduced or adjusted dwelling unit factor proposal is.
Right.
To see if that might be better.
I think we should suggest it as something, because we don't have the ability to analyze what that is.
Yeah, but suggested instead of scrapping it across the board, at least that does keep some protections in place. And I think also, I think what's kind of come up is the fact that while they are talking about different types of neighborhoods, low density, high density, medium density, whatever. That perhaps instead of just going by that, they should look at each community district as its own like mini municipality. That's almost how it's. Yeah, like it's kind of already how it's run, like. You have the community board, we deal with all the agencies to deal with stuff in our districts, all that kind of lines up. So to have targets more by community district versus by the city as a whole means that things can be more tailored to those specific neighborhoods and communities, and it's the residents and the people who understand the neighborhood best that are helping to figure it out.
Pete?
In line with the current draft as it is, and I think it should be more specific to our community rather than just the general city. So.
Thanks, JD.
Yeah, good work, everybody. I would just try to find a connection between the special district and the production of affordable housing. I think there is a direct line with that, and I think we should find. To address Katie's point about livability, the special district was created to preserve not only economic diversity, racial diversity, ethnic diversity. I think the fact that so many people believed in this special district allowed us to create more affordable housing. That was part of the connection. And I think we need.
And have it accepted.
And have it accepted. So there's a direct connection between what Paul was saying about a special district and the production of affordable housing. If you throw out the special district, you're going to throw out that incentive. Now, I can't prove that, but that's something I'd like us to think about.
On the screen, Katie Stokes.
Congratulations, Joe. So JD, exactly to your point, I think if we use that language, which is about why we had the special districts, and it's about economic diversity and racial diversity and everything else, instead of saying we're protecting like the neighborhood livability, it's because frankly, everybody's going to argue, oh, this is going to change our neighborhood too much if we actually have to create some affordable housing. And what we need to say is, we've done it. we're really good at creating affordable housing, and we're also good at making sure that we've protected all of these other issues, right? That we've protected economic and diversity and racial diversity and everything. So I think we can do it all. We just have to be careful with our words. And I guess the two, oh, sorry. Just the two other quick things I wanted to add is I totally support the idea of requesting a target for every community district and saying let us meet our target. And if we meet our target, then let us do it by what we know is proven and works, and instead of having to change all the rules. And the other thing is, I think it's been mentioned a couple times, but I don't recall seeing any language about it. It's just about sort of the landmark districts and making sure that we are.
We have a whole section coming, we have from Chelsea land use, that's what we're gonna.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I just haven't seen it. All right, that's all.
Yeah, they gave us notes. Hector on the screen, you're up. Final thoughts.
Final thought. Like I said, I'm still a little concerned about, the type of protections for this kind of expansion and the rezoning and everything. So basically, it's as though the people have mentioned already, it's a little too soon, too quick. The way this is rapidly going, and like you said, there's no real proper thought put into this plan. So I'm not happy about it, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. I mean, I'm all for affordable housing, but the way they're implementing it is it's pretty haphazard, I think.
Thank you, Hector. Dolores.
I agree with Hector. I do think this is haphazard. I do think that city planning can do better. Personally, I am not in support of this plan at all because I don't think it's a plan. From the board's position, we've clearly demonstrated that there is a path to highlighting some of the areas that work. I think Paul's language that he's already suggested is very thoughtful and works to the point of describing what we do and what we can do, while not being in the position that I personally am in, which is to say, we should say no to the city of yes, because it's not a good plan.
Okay. Paul.
Yeah, mostly everything has been stated, and I agree with you all. Thank you, whoever dug up the specific stat of us being number 4, I did not know that.
That would be the Department of City Planning.
Well, thank you for that, city planning, but I throughout all this, I said, UAP, where am I know that there was something, it was just, I couldn't figure it out, I just Googled it. Universal Affordability Preference shares the same acronym with unidentified anomalous phenomena, which is what the Air Force calls UFOs today. And I'm afraid that there is more in common there than I'd like. Thank you for hopeful.
Okay, at 9:05, that was excellent. Let's go to.
It's not broken, so don't fix this, please. Thank you.
Liam.
Yeah, I guess a quick question. So this doesn't take a yes, no position.
Well, no, we need to, we're not, one committee actually said no unless, and so that's our final thing to discuss. I'm trying to get our final words, points here, so.
We will get, okay. Yeah, I mean, I am probably, one of the few people who broadly supports this proposal, and kind of believes that the changes are necessary while also believing that our district has done a really good job on some of these things.
Did you see that from younger and older?
Yeah.
I know, but I mean, you've seen this, like there's been thousands of units created to join the board.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I expressed my concerns earlier about kind of the studio apartments. The answer they gave was a bit snarky, but it did hit the right point, which was that is a serious area of demand. And I think that this plan does well to address it. So.
Thank you. Well.
I am concerned about the speed with which the city wants to force this down.
I think you're not alone in that concern.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about that, but be that as it may, we're focusing on this letter right now.
Yes.
And I have some notes from our last meeting, some words that we had agreed on, I think we had agreed on, that did not make it to the new draft, so I'll just I should read them out real quickly now, and if you agree, I'll send an email to you. One was, right towards the beginning, we share the same goals as DCP and applaud the ultimate goal of more affordable housing. However, our plan is more nuanced and avoids unintended.
There actually is no intro yet, so yes, that's very helpful.
So I can
Yes,
send
yes,
that to
there's
you.
no intro yet.
Yes.
And the other part that we discussed a lot, quite a bit in the last meeting, which did not make it here, corresponds to now lines 94 through 96. It says, many of these zoning proposals may have merit on their own. The word may did not make it to the new,
Well, because we talked about it in other committees subsequent, and they
Right.
were clear about have merit.
okay, and then that same line, it would be, I guess, 95, on such matters that may greatly affect other community boards on it.
Gotcha.
That's it.
ROBERTA. Roberta. You
So,
got the last.
yeah,
No,
okay,
community.
yeah, I guess that is. Okay, so I think it's important when looking at this proposal and the community board's role in it to take at least one step back. I know this is not going to make everyone happy to say it, but what happens in other places around the city and the failure of the rest of the city, the vast majority of the rest of the city to produce housing has affected us. It has made like rents here go up at a faster rate. And it has only helped accelerate displacement from this
I
neighborhood.
believe that rents are going to faster rate for one simple reason. Our land in the central business district core has such value that if you had a toothpick, you'd build on it here. That's the nature of real estate. I mean,
All right, well, let me finish. So land values are a key part of this, but a huge issue is that there is nowhere for like new housing to go. And that it is a particularly laudable goal to figure out how to encourage places that haven't been building to begin to do so, not necessarily because we want housing to be in other places, because we wouldn't opine on that, but because it does have an effect. Because we like New York City is a housing market, and while you have submarkets, what happens in other places, like there's demonstrable like academic literature that suggests that what happens in other places affects us here. And so it is important to get other places to buy into like the production of housing. However, you know, I think we've heard today that we need to kind of touch on the concept of fair share. You know, we've done a lot, and we can encourage, you know, the city council through its Where We Live framework. I'm happy to kind of write about this a little bit more to, you know, promote the concept of fair share, promote the concept of target, and how they could potentially figure into some of the requirements here within the zoning. I mean, I think that with the special districts and the discussion of the special districts, important to separate, you know, talk about the like potential for demolition and displacement, so the housing subparts in particular, because I think that like you can talk about neighborhood character, you can talk about livability, and those things are important. But I think those are far less important and far less salient than protecting what I would describe as naturally occurring affordable housing.
demo displacement of the rent regulated units to make sure we're not that big special.
And that is just like that focus in the special districts, I think kind of gets at Katie's point where there are concerns that these, you know, like the concerns about livability can sound almost laughable to someone, you know, looking at 59 community districts, looking at one of just unfortunately, like for no value judgment, one of the wealthier transit accessible community districts in the city, and saying, well, I don't know, like I don't know how much I care about their livability. If I'm not saying that this is what people are saying, but that's potentially a consideration. If you can couch that in the protection of affordable units, I think that is important, because it is actually a thing that it seems like a lot of people here care about, self-included. I would also say in the language around the high density districts, we should include some of the specifics surrounding that special permit letter for the 12 FAR and say, you know, put them, you know, literally write our special permit process into this zoning.
That's a really good idea, because it helps give city council a very concrete something.
Because people don't wanna, like, I think that people are very sensitive about the additional residential floor area stuff. And we, through, many months of public testimony and discussion, came up with something that I think might actually be workable to be able to put that forward and to say to city council, actually, this is a thing that we could do. And then finally, I mean, I don't think this is like particularly surprising. I do think that promoting universal affordability preference in some limited form is important. I think it is important beyond this particular district. But I also think that it has applications particularly for infill as well. And that might be with additional density, it might not be. It could just be the conversion of non-residential to residential floor area. Whatever it is, there is value in a proposal that ultimately creates affordable housing out of additional density. I mean, VIH was also, useful. We created many units through VIH, so I think that is, it is worth thinking about.
Did you think about some language for requiring UAP within a special zoning districts with various current limits and heights and whatever on zoning lots with non-residential uses?
Sure.
With no
additional density bonus.
No residential FAR, with a reference someplace else. I think that's an important thing. I would love if tomorrow, a one-story garage in the mid-block, if they redevelop it, could be a 60-foot residential building with 2 affordable units. That'd be fantastic.
But not 120.
Correct, that's what I'm saying, though, within the current limits and everything, because I think that's the kind of thing that we can say, that's what we can go for in a minute. None of that existed, like, for example, the mid-blocks in Hell's Kitchen sub-district in Hudson Yards, we couldn't get any affordable units because there was no bonus for an R8A district. Now there is. So like, we could say it like that, but within that confines, I would like to know that we can get affordable units.
I can segue where I think you're about to go about how to phrase the letter. Right. I just want to forward and follow up meeting with Roberta said, and I largely express myself, it is that CB4, the number one issue is housing.
Yeah.
The whole city of New York, the number one issue is housing. City of New York, it has problems with it, but speaking for myself, the overall aspect of it, I'm in favor of it. Because the status quo ain't working.
No, not at all.
And I know someone said CB4 has a precedent of not opining on stuff outside of it, but I agree, it's almost like a foreign policy. We can't be insular. We can't be insular, just saying.
But I can't speak to accessory dwelling units in someone's garage. I don't even know what a garage is.
The need and the mechanism to get housing by other areas not producing the housing has an impact throughout coastal New York, and to some degree has an impact on community board 4 or the area contained within community board 4. So what I would respectfully suggest, there's actually 15 proposals on the city of housing authority. I don't know, and there was so CB4 did a letter, I think, on February 12th to 24th on economic opportunity, where one could we say.
This is a little bit different because.
Could we be laudable and say, well, how we support housing, we have a track record of supporting housing. We support the overall goals of city of yes, here are our concerns we'd like to see addressed, but
We're really important about not being sucked into other fights. I gotta be honest on the politics of this. There are some major fights around this that are things that Roberta's saying there's things that, I actually personally and professionally support accessory dwelling units. There are parts of the city who are dead set against it. And I don't want us to be thrust into that, because those council members are gonna be doing weird horse trading stuff.
I guess what I'm trying to say is.
And we shouldn't be involved in that. If our council member
So the flip side of that is you'll have folks from Staten Island will say increase the density. They'll say increase the density in Midtown Manhattan because it's already there, right? So we don't need to go ahead and invite an opinion for something that doesn't impact us.
Because there's gonna be some weird stuff happening.
And you're saying that it impacts us because overall the city prices are higher. But the truth is that in Midtown Manhattan, you're going to be able to sell property, you're going to make money developing no matter what. It's the actual market itself which drives the ability for developers to produce any type of housing.
I'm just cautious about the politics coming up and what's gonna happen among the members. And they're all gonna try to get something or get something exempted or pulled out.
Light touch, fair share, that's all.
Yeah,
That's
you're
not
right.
to touch anything, that's not to say anything.
You're, no, I'm
Place.
with you on that, yes. It's the light touch thing, be careful.
Like, city council did fair share, it's literally the city's policy.
Right.
We're just saying, okay,
So
city
I
policy.
want to cut off our conversation. We're going to run the room for the final question, which is the yes with conditions and the no unless. At the land use committee, it was decided that this would be no unless. So let's go around the room. Unless Marie, do you have anything to add on?
Which land use committee, Joe?
Hell's Kitchen.
Right, but what about Chelsea? Did they vote on it?
They did not vote on that issue. No.
They had not.
They did not take a specific yes with conditions, no unless.
Say that again, Paul?
In the discussion at Clinton Hell's Kitchen land use of City of Yes, there was a discussion and the group in total recommended that this be no unless.
Yeah, it's just like 2 months ago.
This is a couple months ago. Okay, couple months ago. No. So let's go around the room and discuss our program.
Are we voting on the letter, like the current, like what's gonna go on top of the letter, basically?
Well, no, this is the final part of the letter.
Our position.
We've talked about all the pieces of this, right? And you should remember, I believe Jesse is correct. For City of Yes, for carbon neutrality, we voted yes. Conditions, right?
Yes, with conditions.
And for economic opportunity, we voted no unless with conditions. And I think this one is even more controversial. And there's been a lot of jockeying around because our board has looked at as a leader in this stuff on how we take position. So.
So point of order, can we just ask the two different versions? Let's get a showing of hands of
Right.
who is no with conditions and who is.
Correct, so no with conditions.
Sorry.
No unless,
No.
yes.
Right, no unless with conditions or yes with, or yes with
No.
conditions.
Some of the newer members, can you explain that?
Yeah, believe it or not. The city of New York, the city planning commission, the city council really are sensitive to how community boards take positions on things. And, they really are desperate to get folks to the community boards to say yes with conditions. It gives them much more political support. And then when various community boards on a project, like ours, for example, the Port Authority project, right, that came to land use, recently the community took a position, yes with conditions. We engaged with it so long, we extracted so many things, we're figuring something out. On the major rezoning proposals that happened, Hudson Yards, West Chelsea, Clinton Special, we voted no unless. Because it was a very serious matter, that no, unless you fix these things. And therefore gives the city government incentive to fix these things as we go through the process. So that's is that a good description, Paul?
Yeah, I think that's a great description, and different agencies respond differently to things. You'll hear a lot of times BLP letters, for example, the State Liquor Authority, they respond very well to no with conditions. The Landmarks Preservation Commission, they are used to hearing a yes with conditions, right? So their attitude is they'll see somebody say yes, but please fix these things, and that's their mindset, you can say that. And BLP does it to SLA in a very different way. Every letter says no. When we first read it, you're like, we deny every single license. But every license, it ultimately gets approved with the conditions that we put forward to SLA. So the struggle I think we're having with this particular one is that because this community board is one of the advocates for housing, advocates for affordable housing, has success in affordable housing. Almost every other board is saying no to this because of Dolores's point that it's not planning, it's hopeful.
It's 15 and 35, right? 15.
I don't know the numbers, but the point is that if we say yes with conditions and we align with sort of our affordable housing plan, that's one thing. If we say no, unless you meet other conditions, that's to reinforce our housing. So it's a very fine line.
My question is, are you more likely to get the conditions then? Met either way?
in this.
I think that they,
In this case, no, this is a political position. And so,
On all of our major rezoning proposals, a minute for us, our major rezoning proposals, our board has consistently voted no unless to make its point, and we have found that it's taken very seriously. I will note that, right? It's only when we have like these proposals that we adore, affordable housing, the Gotham West proposal with the whole block being redeveloped with a school, things that we like been in partnership with, that we give the yes with
We've
conditions.
had input more from.
We've had so much input, so of course we're embracing it, like the major renewal projects that happen, you know. So that's the really interesting nuance here. Dolores wants to do a nice quick straw poll. So can I just ask that people who are interested, who are supporting no with conditions, please raise your hand.
No, unless.
It's no unless.
Jesse.
I'm sorry, I don't interrupt. Can I just say one thing? I just think that this question is valuable, and maybe a question whether it's valuable or not, but I would just say if just hearing what everybody said around this room today, if we're saying no with conditions, then I do think the conditions need to be feasibly met. And I just think I think if we are saying, we're listing a bunch of conditions that we know that at the end of the day, we don't think can be met in any real way in this application, then let me finish. Then we should be saying no, and here are the reasons why. That's what we should be saying. I just think that's more, that's being honest and sincere. If we have these conditions, then we need to really think that city council land use, DCP, maybe the borough president would step up, can in some way get us to that finish line, and maybe eventually get us to that city council hearing where one of us can say, we started off as a no with conditions and they've somehow gotten met. And if we don't believe that.
And we're not gonna get every one of them.
No, we're not, but I just think if we don't really believe that, I just think it's not, in my opinion, we should just say no, and these are the reasons why. And that's.
I was
There should be 3 different votes, you're saying.
No, I'm
No,
saying that's complicated. I'm just trying to say, this is my opinion.
I do have a question procedurally.
Yes.
After this letter goes out, right, down the road, hopefully, like, are they gonna respond more? Like, is there another opportunity for us to voice?
We are gonna be meeting with city planning, we're gonna be meeting with city council land use, we're gonna be talking to our other elected officials at the state and federal level, because they are deeply invested, especially in our special zoning districts, for literally decades and decades. And there's gonna be lots of political meetings that say, what can you help extract from the city to help manage this process?
And we just, again, for the newer people, go through the process of zoning agreements, TCP, boroughs, city council, borough president, mayor, like how that. And so the question, I think, yes, there will be other bites at the apple.
Yes.
Because of the process.
City council is over this in November or thereabouts, right?
That's right. We have months and months going ahead.
Not for us as a community board to discuss, but for us to discuss with the next people down the line. Yeah.
The process is the community board has ongoing meetings with its elected officials through the whole process and other city agencies. I mean, I will note, the fact that we got a response on that shared apartment stuff, I think is directly, no one raised that before. Individual leases, like we got something settled there, we don't like. We
so is Jesse's point, should we be looking at 3 different possible?
I actually propose to do 2.
Okay.
I appreciate Jesse's intellectual contribution, but let's go back to where we are, so.
Okay.
For those who are in favor, for the first thing is folks who want to vote no unless with conditions, please raise your hand. Okay.
I'm gonna vote no.
Where?
Okay.
We're only doing either or not.
This.
You only need to.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
No unless.
6, no unless.
And online.
Online, Hector's no unless, okay, 7, so I haven't voted yet, and then let's go to the people who would like to vote yes with conditions. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Katie.
And Katie.
So 5, we got Rachel.
5, okay, so JD?
No, I'm voting no.
Okay,
So that's 13.
JD, I'm actually not giving that option at this moment, so.
Okay, then I vote no with condition.
Okay.
Eight.
Right, 8. Okay, so now the 2 people I'm going to Joe and read myself.
Well, before you started taking the vote, I was going to say I took some notes and, you know, everyone shared their thoughts about what should be in the letter, what was important to them. And I've been here all night long, so I wanted to make it short and sweet. And so what I wrote was, I think in the letter, just putting in this part about the special district, 75%, we're number 4, we're amazing, we do it best, we should be planning. And I wrote that I don't feel totally comfortable with yes or no at the moment.
But we're voting at this moment.
Yeah, I know. And so that's what I'm struggling with. I wasn't comfortable with writing yes or no. And in the letter thinking, well, couldn't we just do yes or no per item and then the reason? I mean,
I believe CB7 did something like this.
Yeah, but I would honestly,
That's not-
you're leaving yourself in no man's land.
In no man's land.
They can't go, you cannot submit something to the
It's cherry
DCP.
picking.
if I am leaning,
So what you say?
so listening to everyone, listening to all the points, I listened to some of that 15-hour meeting. I didn't listen to most of it, or even, no, not half of it, but I listened to Mark Levine and everyone before him speak. And I think where I'm at with it and listening to everyone sitting here and online, I feel like I'm a no, unless, that's where I'm leaning right now.
And I am obviously a no unless, because I think we're gonna get more traction out of this.
For strategic purposes.
Strategic purposes.
That's the way to go.
That's also what I was thinking. Strategically, I think it's almost stronger
Either
to
way,
say no.
the mayor wants this to run on, he's putting a lot of pressure on the
Right, that's the
process.
problem.
And
The community boards that
so
will
there
stand
needs
out.
to be counter pressure.
Will be the no.
And I think that comes from no.
They'll do the yeses.
So either way, the majority was no, unless.
The majority is no unless. So we're gonna propose a letter. And I think one thing I wanna say to everybody here, yeah, it is 9:30, but this is probably one of the most consequential major zoning changes since 2005 that's affected our district.
So, I just want to find out, do you want to go to the next item on the agenda or?
We're not doing that. No, we're gonna do a vote. So now the letter is no unless with the pile of conditions incorporating all of the discussion we had tonight, right? And I wanna thank again, every member, because this was not an easy, I don't think many boards have the depth of discussion that we have in our district. So thank you all online, Katie and Hector. So all of those in favor of yes, a quick question, but very short.
Would there be any benefit to also add something in about the process and how we just?
I gotta know they're ready.
Okay, that's it.
Hector, too soon, too quick, DCP can do better. So.
Just wanted to make sure that was covered, that's all.
So all of those in favor of the letter with all of our comments included in the Transportation Planning Committee and the Chelsea Land Use Committee for a no unless with 95 conditions, please raise your hand. All those against. the letter.
No.
One, two, three, 4, 6. You're, Kevin, I'm just making sure you're keeping your hand down. Okay. All right.
All right, so
I don't know.
I'm just saying, all those against voting no unless. Okay.
1, 2.
Wait.
You're against, it's fine.
No, 3.
I think the letter.
The letter.
You're not voting for the letter as is right now.
You're voting against the letter as proposed by the committee. That's what you're voting.
Which is fine, let's do it.
Totally fine. Now, do
Wait,
it.
I'm sorry, please raise your hand again. 1, 2, 3.
Now, all I want to know,
And I want to confirm, Katie, you're not having your hand up at this point. So
She raised it for the first one.
For the what?
She raised it for the first vote. It was.
Please speaking, go ahead.
Jesse, do you want me to do it again?
No, you voted yes for the proposed letter.
I voted yes for the letter that says no unless.
now, all I want to do, right, we're gonna close this meeting in a second. All I want to know is that this is really important. When we get to full board now, we're gonna have this discussion, and for all members, especially new ones, you've got to think about the broad, high-level discussion happening here. We we've had people vote against humongous letters because they didn't like one piece of it. And I've got to really, really recommend that everyone thinks this through between now and next week, because it creates an impression if you vote against a huge committee discussion over 3 committees over many months and vote against that position, that the board is divided. And one of the key hallmarks of our board 4 on the west side is we may have blood on the floor, have all these discussions and bitch back and forth and kill each other. When we get back to the public part of it, we get unanimity, and that's what gets us actual influence on the process. And that is my direct experience. So just think about it going forward, and not everything's gonna be perfect. But I really want to say for the 4th time, thank everybody for participation, and thank you for Roberta for just Katie.
That was fun.
That was good. Thank you for really putting up with this constant, like, mental.
We are not done yet, so.
We have to be done.
Don't get ready here.
There's no way we can do this, Maria, tonight.
No, but yes, we can, because it's only gonna take 5 minutes or less. If it goes longer, then it can be held in September. So, but,
I'm fine.
and I see that Serena's still here. I don't know if I can speak, but she can do full board.
Mhm.
All right, so did you guys see it, the cab list?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we only have, so the reason why this came up is because Urban Pathways, the drop-in center on 9th Avenue between 51st and 52nd is gonna be opening up. I know they're gonna have a cab. I wanna be part of that cab, but I can't do all of the cabs. And I need help from committee members. Okay, so the list has the different shelters in the district that have cab meetings and how often the cab meetings are. Most of the cab meetings are usually hybrid and or in person, and they're usually at the site, at the location, okay? And so I'm curious if anybody is interested in being part of the, let's start at the bottom. The project renewal, the Ramada Inn cab, that is for single adult women on West 44th Street.
Can you, I'm sorry, because I
Yes,
looked at it,
Lisa,
but
go.
I don't have it printed out. Can you just name all of the cabs we're trying to fill?
Okay. You wanna know specifically the population or the street?
Sorry, Katie has her hand up. Did you?
Sorry.
What
Okay,
was
thanks.
Thank you.
I was just
Katie?
volunteering, that's all.
She's volunteering.
There you go.
All right, Katie, thank you so much.
And just to clarify,
Yes.
anyone can do any cab, you do not have to live adjacent.
No,
No,
but you have to report back what happens, so we know what's going on.
You're the CB4 rep, that's all that matters.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, because I feel like that might not be clear.
the next one, West 51st Street, is Lantern Organization. They actually have them semi-annually, and they haven't had one in like a year.
I would push that on.
So I will leave that blank for now. It doesn't really matter, and if anything, I
But it
can
used to be
probably
done
do
for
them.
them.
They used to be they used to be regularly, because there were so many issues, and it hasn't been in so long because it's going well
Right.
there. And issues are getting addressed by a phone call from the community member to staff there. West 52nd Street, Care for the Homeless, they are meeting yearly. I don't remember, the next one will probably be in the fall.
I'll take care of this almost.
Yes.
I'm already engaged there.
Thank you, Dolores. And Wynn doesn't actually have a running cab. As long as I've been here, I haven't heard of a cab running there. We have BRC on West 25th Street, adult single men. Anybody interested going once,
Every other
going
month.
twice, every other
You
month?
help for someone from Chelsea for that one.
Thank you, Roberta.
Thank you, Roberta. It used to be actually Jessica Chase, can no
Yeah,
longer do
I
that.
would check it on.
And we have West 49th Street, Clinton Family Residence. It says they,
Started.
yeah, they usually meet with the, it says they meet with the Block Association, right?
They do. They've been very good.
Oh, it has, okay, good.
Thank you. And then finally we have West Cab. I don't think that started yet either.
Yeah.
Yes, I went to a meeting and it was not in person.
It was a bit of a technical.
Yeah, I'm right adjacent to that one.
Yay.
That's quarterly too, by the way.
But it's really weird though. I went to this meeting, like, who are you? I'm like, I'm here for the community advisory.
Yeah, quarterly. Okay, that is it. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody online. Bye.